Chapter 1138. Although the members of the alliance of rescuers who had invaded Earth had been suppressed by the destroyer after their impressive appearance, they did not look like invaders, but more like unfortunate people who had been abused. This was not because they were too weak, but because the destroyer was the opponent that Shun Ong and Odin had carefully chosen for them. In terms of attributes, they completely restrained them. For example, the Deathblade General, who had always been at a disadvantage, was actually the leader of the 5 Obsidian Generals. He possessed superhuman strength and superhuman speed. In terms of physique, he was on par with Hulk and Prince Thor of Asgard. His speed far exceeded the reaction speed of an Earthling. No member of the Avengers could guarantee that they would not be injured when facing him. And once injured, the divine artifact in the Deathblade General's hand, the Deathblade, carried the power of death, would completely deprive the enemy of life. Even Logan the Wolverine's self-healing ability could not be spared. This was a weapon that his master, Thanatos, had specially created for him after obtaining the memory and inheritance of Thanatos, the successor of the goddess of death in the parallel universe. And the soul of the Deathblade was hidden in the Deathblade, so no matter what damage his body suffered, he would not die. Instead, he would heal quickly. But divine artifacts were extremely difficult to destroy. If S.H.I.E.L.D. and the Avengers were to go up on their own, without the technological support of the Alliance of Revolutionaries, they would not be able to find a way to destroy the Deathblade. Most likely, they would have to ask the Asgardians for help. Even with the power of the Destroyer, it could not catch the figure of the Deathblade General and give him a fatal blow. It could be seen that the leader of the 5 Obsidian Generals was not an undeserved reputation. If he had not encountered a completely lifeless puppet like the Destroyer, the Deathblade was an assassin with super high agility and a one-hit kill. No one could keep up with his speed or completely block his attack. And as long as his blade made a cut, the power of death on it would immediately deprive the enemy of life. As long as he faced a living enemy, the Deathblade was an extremely terrifying reaper. He could slaughter the life of an entire planet by himself, constantly killing enemies, expanding the power of death on the blade, infecting the land of the planet, and turning a planet of life into a land of death. It was a pity that the outer shell of the Destroyer was made using Asgard's degenerate white dwarf technology. It was the same artifact as Nimoy's, so it was not afraid of going head-on against the Blade of Death. Although there was a soul residing in the Destroyer, it was only used to slow down this terrible weapon. In essence, it was still a lifeless, soulless weapon, an ultimate combat puppet. Therefore, the power of death that could kill in one hit was useless. As an assassin with high agility and high damage, the Undead Blade General had to deal with an HP shield that had a slow aura and a weakness break bug. Do you know how much pain the Undead Blade General felt? Black-tongued tactician Ebony Throat and Demon Warlock Esteban were facing the same predicament. They were both masters of psychic abilities. Demon Warlocks were best at playing with people's souls, while the Destroyer was immune to psychic attacks and had no soul. Their magic was completely useless against the Destroyer's powerful magic resistance, forcing the 2 powerful Archmages to become support. Furthermore, it was a third-rate support that could only interfere with the Destroyer through changing the environment. They had been reduced to creating swamps, fog, reflective ice crystals, and empty space around the Destroyer to help a few melee attackers create bunkers and suitable environments. The Destroyer had Dimensional Anchor, Spell Insight, Spell Reading, Enhanced Magic Defense, Disintegration, and other effects. It also had Void Walk, Psionic Immunity, Mind Mechanization, Gravity Control, Magic Immunity, Dark Vision, Magnetic Tracking, Super Light Speed, Extraordinary Construct, and other special attacks. It also had Gravity Aura, Thermal Aura, Pulse X-Ray, Planet Quake, and other special attacks. That's right, the Destroyer was also known as the Neutron Star Golem. The Neutron Star Golem that slaughtered the gods and destroyed Buddhas. Although it was only an inferior version, Ebony Throat and Esteban were not archmages. Even the 2 pure-blooded mages were helpless. Cassius and his group of half-baked melee mages fanatics could only be slaughtered. As for Ghost Rider, who had been insta-killed at the beginning, his ultimate move, the Trial's Eye, was also completely restrained. Even if his luck was off the charts, and he had awakened the natural abilities that the Messiah had created them, broken through the heavy defenses set up by the ancient gods and civilizations, and judged the soul of Turkula hidden in the Destroyer, that would only make the Destroyer even more terrifying. What was the use of killing the one who was holding them back? Could the IQ of a chimpanzee compare to the combat intelligence carefully modulated by the ancient gods? There was also Prince Namor of Atlantis. He had no intention of making a move at all. At that time, when the Destroyer was created to resist the Celestial Team, the Atlantean ancient civilization had also joined in. Of course, they knew how much insane technology they had added to it, and how much the other ancient civilizations had contributed. So Namor, who knew the Destroyer inside out, had no hope of defeating this bug. Anyway, the Destroyer would not attack the Atlanteans if it did not actively attack. This was the basic setting that the major civilizations had installed when they created it. So, how could the aliens on Earth who were discriminated against by the entire solar system suffer? Although Zheng Shanqi did not know this, the Destroyer would not attack him. Fu Manzhou was also an old human, and his mother belonged to the ancient Huaxia civilization. This was the benefit that came with ancient humans. Zheng Shanqi obviously had no intention of challenging the neutron star golem with his martial arts. Although the path of martial arts was unfathomable, if a boxing champion who trained his muscles wanted to fight an excavator head-on, he must be one of those who had lost his mind. Although Zheng Shanqi was not a low-level muscle man, the Destroyer was not an excavator. The situation was in a stalemate for a while. Although the demon warlocks and the others had been thinking of ways to slow down, banish, or even just temporarily hold the Destroyer back, all of their methods were in vain. How could the ultimate weapon created by the power of several civilizations not have thought of these tactical methods? All possible flaws on the Destroyer were repaired cleanly. Only Odin and Chenong, who were watching from the side, felt that something was wrong. If this went on, the Destroyer would probably wipe out the enemy. How could they continue filming according to the script? Chenong and Odin discussed for a while. No, this version's instance dungeon boss was too strong. There had to be a version update. Fix the Destroyer's mental immunity bug. Install the Turkura interference patch. Reduce the Destroyer's combat intelligence level. Downgrade the main combat intelligence to a combat support compensation system. Increase Turkura's combat authority. Fix the degenerate invulnerable armor bug. Reduce magic immunity. Through overloading the stellar engine, cause damage to the Destroyer's outer shell enchantment. Reduce magic resistance. Weaken spatial anchoring. Change the gravitational control technology to adaptive gravitational binding state. Cancel the Destroyer's gravitational control ability. Chapter 1139. No weaknesses at all. Demon Warlock Esteban thought to himself. He had already tried dozens of weak and strange curses. These curses could not change the situation, but they could constantly probe for information. Their nature was chaos, order, nature, ice, poison, wind, and fire. Some are even effective only by changing the environment. There were also high-level curses that involved the soul, mind, and even the rotten nature of matter. But there was no doubt that other than some weak curses that could be effective by changing the environment and could be effective without changing the surface laws of the physical world, there was nothing else. The Destroyer was a perfect weapon. At least at this low level, it could be said to have been tempered 1,000 times. It was not so powerful that it made people despair, but it was not easy to find a bug. This is a perfect weapon. Esteban reminded everyone. I have roughly guessed its origin. It is the Destroyer of Asgard, the ultimate weapon forged by the gods of the Nine Realms. Esteban turned to look at Namor and said, Atlantis was also involved when they were called gods. Namor had to explain. After the collapse of the Tower of Babel, Atlantis lost a lot of technology. When creating the Destroyer, because they were afraid of the power of the enemies of the Nine Realms, they used a lot of the only copies of ancient technology. Now, Atlantis is no longer arrogant enough to think that we are gods. The powerful technology of ancient times was also lost because of fear of the disaster of the apocalypse. In fact, we're just a group of exiled slaves, but we are at least prisoners of war of the apocalypse. We are much stronger than those experimental animals that call themselves humans. Namor sneered. The destroyer is very powerful. Namor said, it is not easy for us to defeat. Just as the alliance of saviors looked disappointed, Namor suddenly changed his tone and said, but the Asgardians should never have added a soul to it and given it such high authority. The destroyer has no weaknesses, so anything that is forcibly added becomes a weakness. Namor said cruelly. He and Esteban secretly exchanged telepathic messages, and Turkula, who was in the destroyer, was clearly very clear-headed. He knew that as long as he did not do anything, he could easily take care of these people. If he wanted to take the initiative to do something, it would instead create unnecessary openings. He sensed that the destroyer's instincts were stronger than his own, and he had already done his best to avoid interfering with it. Esteban whispered, the destroyer's only weakness is the soul in his body, and the soul in his body, and the king of Wakanda, T'Challa. Namor said calmly. That's why we can only defeat the destroyer by grasping T'Challa's fatal weakness. Then come. Suddenly, Cassius stretched out his hand and drew two arcs, creating a huge portal in front of the destroyer. The destroyer easily destroyed the portal, only using its own body's adaptive gravity system. The huge gravity binding system created a supermassive space fold layer on the surface of the destroyer that compressed about 10 kilometers of space by 10 centimeters. The huge portal became the size of a finger as it approached the destroyer. Of course, a portal the size of a finger could not teleport the destroyer. Although the destroyer looked like it was only the height of 2 people, it was actually forged from a white dwarf with a diameter of nearly 1 kilometer. Its true size was that large, and the reason it appeared to be only the size of a tall warrior was that most of its mass was used to maintain its own adaptive gravity system to prevent its mass from destroying Earth. And the reason why it could not be destroyed was also because of this. To destroy its true level, one must have the ability to destroy a white dwarf. Ebonyho quickly used his psionic ability to lock on a Strange from the bottom of his consciousness. With his overloaded mental power, he stabbed him fiercely against the defense of the Agamotto orb. Strange immediately felt a sharp pain. The Deathblade General's blade passed through the portal and pierced Strange's lower abdomen. Cassius's opening of the portal just now was just a camouflage. His real goal was to open a fist-sized portal in front of the Deathblade General and let the blade pass through. The demon warlock Esteban covered up all of this with the demon's illusion. Ebonyho's full-force attack was only to stop Strange in the middle of his jump, giving Cassius time to lock onto his coordinates, and then the Deathblade General would take his head. The few of them completed a coordinated attack that could be described as tacit understanding and killed Strange. The death blade pierced into his chest, and Strange only felt that all the warmth in his body had been sucked away by something in his heart. His whole body was cold, and his strength was drained little by little. His breath was about to turn into frost as he stared blankly at the void in front of him. Does Master Ancient One feel this way too? Strange escaped from his body at the last moment, and his spiritualized body appeared in the time halt. He watched the death blade pull away from his body bit by bit, feeling the power of death on it firmly and irrevocably permeating his whole body. The moment the blade left his body, Strange would die. At this moment, Strange understood everything. The destroyer's weakness was Turkura. To defeat the destroyer, Turkura had to actively interfere with the destroyer. To make Turkura interfere with the destroyer, Turkura had to lose his mind. To make Turkura lose his mind, Turkura had to find his greatest weakness. Turkura's greatest weakness was Wakanda. To seize Turkura's greatest weakness, Turkura had to kill him, stop himself, reverse time, and resurrect everyone in Wakanda. In the time halt, Turkura saw the smug sneer on Cassius's lips after defeating an old enemy, Namor's cold and indifferent eyes, the Deathblade General's cruel and sinister smile. the confidence in Esteban's eyes, Ebony Ho's expression as if a heavy burden had been lifted, and Ghost Rider secretly receiving the power bestowed by Hell, ready to explode at any time. He saw the shock and despair in the eyes of Turkura's soul in the core of the destroyer. "I can't die like this," Strange said. "I have to finish the last thing I should do." "Teacher, Ancient One, I understand." Strange stirred the gem of time while his spirit was out of his body and in the state of time halt. As the runic wheel of the Eye of Agamotto slowly reversed, the area where Bonanzana was located began to move backward. All moving matter began to reverse, and everyone began to retreat. The League of Saviors and the Destroyer. Without the protection of his physical body, Strange Soul was directly exposed outside of time. The protection of the universe for him was already negligible. Some strange, incorporeal creatures began to appear next to him, and a claw reached out from outside of time and grabbed at him. As if he could not see it, Strange continued to reverse time, adjusting everything to the moment that had just happened. This is the responsibility of the Sorcerer Supreme and the Guardian of the Gem of Time. As Strange wantonly altered time, the barrier between him and outside of time became smaller and smaller. Finally, when he was about to complete, Strange took off the Eye of Agamotto on his chest and threw it to Spider-Man. After stripping away this last layer of protection, he was finally caught by an existence outside of time. The way of the Sorcerer Supreme is to protect. Strange only had time to say this last sentence to Spider-Man before he was dragged out of time. Above the sky, in the headquarters of the Holy Shield, Chenang's eyes were indifferent as he looked at the Sorcerer Supreme, who finally realized something and was sealed outside of time as he had planned. Next to him, Nick was also watching. Nick said, "I can see these things because I was eroded by those things behind the door." "Why are you looking too?" Chenang said lightly. "Me too." He turned his head and smiled. "How do you know that my mind is also normal? You also have a door?" Nick asked suspiciously. "It's even more terrifying than that." Chenang smiled with a strange expression. Time continued to flow, and everyone appeared in the bustling city of Bonanzana, which had been restored to its original state. The little spider who should not have been here was in a daze, dragging the Eye of Agamotto. After a long time, after wasting the last time that Strange had opened for him, he looked up and said in a daze, "What? Mr. Strange?" No. I mean, where's Dr. Strange? Did he just give his thing to me? But I don't know how to use it yet. Does this thing have a description or something? Do you know how to use it?" The little spider hurriedly asked Wizard Wong next to him. Wizard Wong also looked at him for a long time before he said with worry mixed with helplessness, "Congratulations, the new generation of Sorcerer Supreme. Now it's your turn to lead the Camartage sorcerers to fight. But I still have a spell." The little spider's body quickly bounced, avoiding the death blade General's knife, and continued to finish his words in the sky. "But I still don't know anything." It only took Strange a few months to use the Eye of Agamotto to drive away Damu. Wizard Wong swept away the transparent air blade from Casillas with his rod and said as a crash course instructor. The destroyer had been angered, but Namor did not care. His face was gloomy, and he almost laughed out of anger at what Strange had done in the end. He roared at the sky. "Is this your way? This is the sacrifice of you group of hairless monkeys? What are you trying to prove? That monkeys can be more humane than us. That monkeys will always be monkeys. The humanity that you have shown is so ridiculous. What do you think your sacrifice can change? On the contrary, you can't change anything." Wizard Wong said faintly, "If you gain humanity, you gain everything. If you lose humanity, you lose everything." Namor did not even bother to talk to him. He just roared angrily, waved his hand, and a huge flying wave hit Wizard Wong, who was entangled with Casillas, and sent him flying. Namor, who had been wandering around the battlefield and observing like a higher creature, was finally angered by Strange's actions before he left. He picked up the golden trident and faced the destroyer. "You changed the process, but you can never change the result I want." As the golden trident fell to the ground, on the South Atlantic Ocean with Wakanda's back, the tide quickly receded from the beach, leaving the marine creatures that could not retreat in time struggling on the beach. Huge waves surged on the relatively calm South Atlantic Ocean. Not long after Bonanzana recovered from the destruction, the people who were still in shock felt a slight vibration under their feet. T'Challa had to take over the authority of the destroyer. He did not even have time to deal with Namor, who had caused all this. He had to face the mountains that were already higher than Bonanzana's approach and the 300-meter-high waves that rushed along the river valley. The river tribe was destroyed in an instant, and everyone was swept into the huge waves. Facing the huge waves that were higher than the mountains and could overturn the ocean, the destroyer stood at the forefront, ready to protect Wakanda behind him. High-energy thermal radiation began to condense in his eyes. The power of a star's prominence could evaporate this huge wave and protect Wakanda behind him. But at this time, hundreds of Atlantean warriors emerged from the sea in the middle of the huge waves. The water, splitting halberds in their hands, shot out in unison, emitting blue rays. Namor raised the supreme, divine weapon of Atlantis, the Golden Trident, and activated the backup that Atlantis had left in the middle of the destroyer. The destroyer, whose authority had been taken over by T'Challa, could not deal with this information attack from within and immediately relaxed for a second. At this time, the ultra-low temperature rays fired by the Atlantean army had covered the destroyer. The ultra-low temperature rays, which were close to absolute zero, instantly froze the particle movement in the entire area of the destroyer. T'Challa's soul was also frozen in this space, and the huge waves smashed into Bonanzana. Without any hindrance, Wakanda was destroyed in an instant. In the frozen destroyer, the bound dark red fireball of the star burned quietly. The ultra-low temperature froze all of the destroyer's activities. Unless the star engine was activated again, T'Challa would be frozen in this moment forever. Under the huge waves, everything was razed to the ground, leaving only a muddy sea that had to wait for the water to slowly recede. Chapter 1140. Even the members of the Rescuers Alliance looked at Namor differently. Of course, they didn't think it was too much, but the way they looked at Namor had a hidden meaning. This was a ruthless person, Atlantis mixed blood prince. Namor was able to become a prince with real power in the Atlantean Sea nation that discriminated against mainlanders. Of course, it wasn't because of reverse discrimination, but because of his decisiveness and ruthlessness. Most people wouldn't dare to slaughter the innocent, but he did. Most people would be decisive when it was difficult to face conflicts of interest, but he dared. Please Baidu search for the most complete version, the fastest updated novel. For survival and the interests of Atlantis, Namor wasn't afraid to slaughter women and children. Even if it was a parallel world of Atlantis, there was also a parallel world of Namor. If it was a life-and-death situation, in order to survive, he would have made up his mind to kill his other self and destroy another Atlantis. No matter what methods he used, Namor still took care of the destroyer. Demon Warlock Esteban, Black Tongue Tactician Ebony Throat, Ghost Rider Johnny, Death Blade General, and Cassius were all freed up. They were only facing Spider-Man, who didn't know how to use the Eye of Agamotto, and Wizard Wong. Wizard Wong protected Spider-Man behind him and said in a low voice, "You go first." He drew a circle with the hanging ring on his right hand, intending to transfer Spider-Man. However, the demon Warlock Esteban made his move. He pulled out a three-headed whip with dark red magma from the void with his right hand and swung it forward. His body also expanded by a head, and he breathed out a thick sulfuric smell from his mouth and nose. Horns grew out of his head, and his feet turned into hooves with reversed joints. The whizzing Balrog whip swept towards Wizard Wong. He used the summoned evil spirit to cover Wizard Wong's eyes. At the same time, Cassius also made his move, opening a fist-sized portal in front of the Death Blade General. Death Blade lifted the Blade of Death and inserted it. Spider-Man's keen spider senses allowed him to avoid the Blade of Death that suddenly appeared in the air, but he had no choice but to separate from Wizard Wong. The two of them were separated and surrounded. Wizard Wong raised the staff of the Life Tribunal, and the Balrog whip wrapped around the staff. He roared and resisted, but his feet were still pulled toward the demon warlock who had transformed into the Balrog. The blade of death suddenly appeared behind him and stabbed into his spine. Master Wong had nowhere to hide. Spider-Man wanted to rescue him, but Ebony Throat used his telekinesis to trap him in midair. Ebony Throat laughed and said, "No one can jump around in front of me." Ebony Throat's ability was the nemesis of the small spiders. The small spiders relied on spider silk to move. However, Ebony Throat's psychokinesis could easily cut through the spider silk, and by relying on the inertia of the spider silk, he could easily change the direction of the spider silk. Mage Wong could not hold on by himself. He could only watch helplessly as the blade of death took away Stellan's life. He simply gave up resisting and used his remaining hand to open a portal beside the little spider. A portal appeared in front of the small spider, and the blade of death came from behind Wizard Wong. Just as the outcome of one death and one escape was about to be decided, a sparkling and translucent piece of blue ice froze the death blade in the void. Icicles rose from the surface of the sea and pinned the death blade between them. The sharp divine weapon kept breaking the ice, but with the support of the endless seawater below, the power of the jade snowflake kept increasing. Finally, it stopped the stab. Jade snowflake. Zheng Shang made a move and condensed the space behind Mage Wong, blocking this fatal blow. The heaven-encompassing 10 rings on his hand shone with a strange brilliance of vital energy flowing. Although you are called saviors, what you bring is destruction, and what you call destroyers want to do is to protect. Zheng Shang turned to face the others from the Saviors Alliance. Martial arts is not just a method of crippling and destroying. It is a path that leads to the pursuit of the true meaning of life. I can't see any touch or understanding of life in you. There is only naked greed, hatred, and destruction. I have always wanted to practice my principles, but facing my father, I flinched. I hope that I can do something to make him acknowledge me. I've thought about a lot and comprehended a lot of the spirit of martial arts. But just now, I realized that just knowing is not enough. I have to use it. Just hoping is not enough. I have to do it. I practice my principles. Zheng Shang said, "Even if I have to pay with my life." "What stupidity," Wu Muhu said slowly. "If just now, when the destroyer was still here and our victory seemed very uncertain, I can understand your betrayal. After all, people are always more inclined to follow the strong. But now, when our strength far exceeds those little bugs, you have betrayed us. Do you think that you alone can defeat all of us?" Zheng Shang said, "My strength is not enough." "Then you are looking for death." Wu Muhu regained his composure and elegance. "I was confused and couldn't see the direction clearly," Zheng Shang said. "But it's not that I don't dare to swing my sword at the strong. I used to have fear. That is because I can't make a prompt decision. I don't know if what I'm doing is right. Once I hesitate, we will cower. But if I can make a clear judgment on something, whether it is valuable or not, I will not be afraid. Compared to death, I am more afraid of doing the wrong thing. I am more afraid of taking the wrong path. This is why I always hesitate when you're fighting. Now, these people, who were my enemies just now, have taught me what the right thing to do is. This is far more important than life and death." Zheng Shang faced them and made the starting gesture of the southern fist. He smiled slightly and said, "The rest is the path of martial arts. It makes me fearless. The path of martial arts is to face death and live." "Stupid." Wu Muhu stretched out his hand and pushed lightly. The remains of the seawater bonanzana shot out from under his feet. The vibrating gold and concrete moved at subsonic speed, bringing with it a shocking momentum. It tore at Zheng Shang and the Sorcerer Wong and the little spider who were under his protection. The whistling sound of the air being torn was extremely shrill. The seawater below was crushed, leaving behind white ripples. Zheng Shang shook his wrist, and the jade ring of the pure heaven 10 rings urged the seawater below to rise, forming a huge ice wall. The ice wall was smashed into pieces by the heavy objects that were shot at it. Jade ice snow's cold pure chi froze the seawater into ice crystals, breaking them and reforming them, creating all kinds of broken sharp ice blades. Demonic blade, 10 rings. Jade crystal pure chi, ice snow slash. Punch, raise arm, twist waist punch. There was no blade, just the simplest punch. But it was called the ice snow slash. Chapter 1141. An iron chain burning with hellfire was thrown out. The golden flame attached to the iron chain was like a long, winding dragon. The iron chain was thrown out in a whirl, smashing the incoming ice tide into pieces. The ice blades that were as hard as alloy were shattered. The iron chain whistled and rotated in the ice tide, looking like a rotating flame tornado, tearing the incoming ice and snow into pieces. www.vat. Ghost Rider, Johnny Buzzera, held the chain with one hand and spun it like a rope. Without the destroyer, who could completely restrain their strength, the Alliance of Saviors finally displayed their combat power that matched their strength. Each of them had top strength that could destroy a planet. Zhang Shang did not want to be entangled with them. He only wanted to save Spider-Man and Wizard Wong and leave. However, his senses to observe the surrounding environment were gradually blurring. His keen senses as a martial artist seemed to be constantly being interfered with. The combination of Cassius and the Deathblade General was also very lethal. He had to raise all his spirit to defend himself. The Demon Warlock was interfering with his senses, and some strange illusions and voices were destroying his intuition. Zhang Shang had no choice but to seal off his 5 senses to prevent his senses from being misled. He raised his martial arts spirit to the sharpest level, using his martial senses to face the enemy. He was like a calm lake, and his spirit was the reflection of the full moon on the surface of the water. He had forgotten all the information that his 5 senses had sensed. Only killing intent and enmity would stir up waves in this lake, and be reflected clearly on the spiritual level that was as clear as a lake. Unless his enemies did not have any murderous intent, any of their attacks would be clearly sensed by Zhang Shang. The Deathblade General appeared from a portal. He was as fast as lightning, far faster than anyone else. Like a black bolt of lightning, he appeared from the portal in an instant and disappeared in an instant. It was like a frame had suddenly been inserted into a normal scene, as if the entire process had been omitted. Little Spider's reflex speed was one of the few that could keep up with the Deathblade. His spider sense was also a rare ability that could effectively deal with the Deathblade's ghost-like attacks. However, he could only faintly sense an extremely fast figure. With Wizard Wong's normal reflexes and the perception of the human eye, the next thing he saw was the General of the Deadblade, traversing a distance of tens of meters and appearing in front of Zhang Shang. The blade was like a scythe, turning into a bolt of lightning that slashed across Zhang Shang's chin. Just like on the mental plane, this strike carried traces of killing intent. It was like the wind blowing past, leaving behind faint ripples and traces on the mirror-like surface of the water. Zhang Shang raised his palm and quickly stretched out, pressing it against the blade of the death edge. Then, he used his strength to push and pull. His palm carried true energy that was as white as clouds and as tough as silk. It made the death edge feel as if his blade had fallen into an endless net. It stabbed in a few inches, making it difficult to advance or retreat. Pure heaven 10 rings, white cloud smoke. Cloud a ceiling. Zhang Shang's palms were like clouds and mist. White true energy rose up, but it was also like a seal, like a shackle, locking down the blade of death. Then, the white clouds were quickly dyed red. The rising clouds were instantly dyed red, as if the sun was shining down and the sunset was gorgeous. The white clouds contained a blazing fire force that suddenly burst out and dyed the entire area red. It was like a burning cloud of fire that seemed to exist continuously and was as hot as fire. Universal 10 rings, rosy afterglow swing. Zhang Shang's rosy afterglow, true energy spread along the blade of death, enveloping it. It made him feel as if every part of his body was being roasted, as if he had fallen into an ultra-high temperature particle field. Blisters appeared on his body from the heat. The blade of death let go and quickly escaped from the range of the rosy afterglow swing. Zheng Shang sealed his five senses. He felt the killing intent recede slightly, and his mind relaxed. At this time, the blade of death pressed down on the air. The blade of death that had been abandoned in the cloud of ceiling moved on its own. Like the hammer of Thor, it paused in the air to accumulate power. Then, like a hot knife through butter, it broke through the true energy that Zheng Shang had relaxed because his mind was wandering and locked onto the blade of death dozens of meters away. It pierced toward his chest. Wu Muhu's spiritual power suddenly exploded. At the same time, it condensed into a dozen spiritual thorns and pierced into Zheng Shang's mind. For a moment, it was as if dozens of large stones had been smashed into the lake. Countless killing intent and enmity created big and small splashes. The calm water's surface became chaotic. Zheng Shang's mind was in a mess, and his true energy could not be controlled as he wished. His true energy moved according to his will. Thus, although the blade of death was fast, his true energy could respond in time. Now that his will was disrupted, his true energy was in chaos, and he could not stop the blade of death from piercing his chest. At this time, a golden ring spun and drilled out like a phantom. Its speed was beyond imagination. Before the blade of death could pierce through Zheng Shang, it hit the center of gravity of the blade, causing it to fall. Lianhua interrupted the fatal attack of the savior and withdrew the Taiji golden ring. She had already hidden to the side and watched for a long time. Only then could she reach out and save him at the critical moment. After Zheng Shang recovered breath, he was able to turn his genuine qi into the best defense. It was tough and continuous, swirling and rotating around the white smoke that dispelled the force, protecting his body. At the cost of giving up the ability to counterattack, he formed a defensive circle that seemed to be sealed. He raised his head and opened his eyes. Looking in Lianhua's direction, he suddenly said, "Wudong Taiji Golden Ring." Lianhua, Erica, and the old man came out from the dark. Lianhua cupped her fists and said, "Lianhua of Wudong greets Brother Zheng. Although good and evil cannot coexist, what Brother Zheng has done today has made me look at you in a new light. Since Brother Zheng has forsaken the dark for the light, how can I watch from the sidelines? If my master was here, you would definitely praise Brother Zheng for what you have done today." Zheng Shang was speechless. He had only acted out of righteousness and had not thought too much about it. Now that he was facing the archenemy of his country, the righteous path, he could not say anything. Death Blade jumped back to the saviors through the portal. Esteban sneered. Today's accidents are really endless. There are more and more reckless things jumping out. Ghost Rider Johnny said, "Never mind that. Let's get rid of them first." "Who did you say you want to get rid of?" A crimson armor descended from the sky and landed slowly. Pot's voice came from within. "Don't think that you're a bunch of successful villains just because you used such a cruel and despicable method to plot against Tekala, the Destroyer. Your cruel actions have truly enraged us. The Holy Shield will crush all of you to death, like a farmer killing pests." Black Bat King, whose black cloak fluttered in the wind of the ruins, wearing a set of black armor and a bat mask with a simple yellow bat logo on his chest, leaped down from the broken section of the tall building and stood next to Potts. He did not speak, but looked at the saviors with determined eyes full of fighting spirit. Another big black man in a black leather windbreaker, holding a Japanese samurai sword and wearing sunglasses, also stood next to Spider-Man. With Lianhua, Erica, and the old man, they seemed to outnumber them, but the Savior's Alliance did not take them seriously. In terms of threat, these people combined were not as troublesome as the Destroyer. Spider-Man, Iron Woman, Black Bat King, and a modified blade were tricky. Zheng Shang and Lianhua could also fight with the power of the divine weapons and demonic blades. But Erica and the old man were just there to make up the numbers, and adding them to the mix might not increase their fighting power. Just like Turkala, the Destroyer, they knew better than Turkala. The people of the Savior's Alliance looked at each other and felt that it was a bit troublesome. But they had even defeated the Destroyer. They were not afraid. They just felt that there was something about this Earth. After defeating a batch, another batch came. Why not all at once? What was the use of such tactics? When the destroyer was still here, these people might have been able to take care of them. Wasn't it too late to come out now? Spider-Man had the same thought. He spread his hands speechlessly and said, "Why didn't you come earlier? Why didn't you come earlier?" I kept asking when Stellan died, when Wakanda was destroyed, and when Mr. Turkula was plotted against. I kept asking, where are the reinforcements? Where are the reinforcements? If you had come earlier, the tragedy would not have happened, and Dr. Stellan would not have died. Potts said in a low voice, "I'm sorry, son." Black Bat King also said in a hoarse voice, "We're too late." Chunong explained to them, "The destroyer is more than enough to deal with these people, but it's hard for me to imagine that when they are together, 1 plus 1 is less than 1. The destroyer could have wiped them all out. That's my trump card." But after Stellan and the others, the situation took a turn for the worse. Maybe I should have left the destroyer alone. According to our big data analysis, you can only hold the destroyer back. Now I have to carefully consider whether there is a point in the existence of heroes. It seems an emotionless weapon like the destroyer can protect humans better. Get out. What you need now is not to ask for an explanation from me, but to prove yourself. Prove that the heroes of humanity are not a burden on the battlefield for the weapons we have created. Otherwise, I may apply to the People's Revolutionary Alliance to create a destroyer team to be responsible for protecting Earth, and let all of you retire. In this way, the heroes did not get an explanation. Instead, they were kicked out. Chunong was transforming into a big villain, so naturally, he would not consider whether or not to tactfully persuade them. Now he was no longer a good comrade of the heroes and an excellent leader of the Holy Shield. He wanted to create a new image. He was a headstrong leader, a control freak, and a reserve villain. In other words, he was preparing to go dark. Dark is 3 times stronger. Chunong looked down at Wakanda from his office and said, "As long as Wakanda is not destroyed, how can you be dissatisfied with me? When I, Chunong, go dark, I must be 300 million times stronger." Chapter 1142. So S.H.I.E.L.D. has been secretly buying shares in Stark Industries? Tony Stark was talking to a mysterious person in his mansion. They've been doing this for nearly 30 years. They started doing these things after my parents were killed, and when I started drinking, they absorbed the shares released by small shareholders in large quantities. How many major shareholders in the board are there people? The voice on the other side of the phone explained, since your parents were killed, SHL absorbed most of the shares at that time and supported the confidence of investors. This seems to be their secret support for you. From the transaction records of SHIELD's secret account, they buy and sell like normal investments, using the inside information they know. It should be Nick Fury who is trying to earn secret funds for SHIELD cell phone terminal. VOT.com. So when I was kidnapped, when I successfully escaped, when I announced the closure of the weapons department of Stark Industries, when I was developing new energy, our honorable Mr. Nick Fury was making a lot of money in the stock market, using their intelligence advantage to seek benefits. Tony Stark sneered. Is this legal? No, I shouldn't ask that. Do we have any evidence? No, the mysterious voice said. They are professionals, and I am just helping out as an amateur. What you should pay more attention to is that after you started drinking 6 years ago, SHIELD began to absorb shares of Stark Industries in large quantities. They only go in and don't go out. The voice slowly said, "It seems like I no longer have any value in their eyes." Stark took a deep breath and said, "They now want the patent of Stark Industries so that their agents can wear Iron Man suits. They want to turn Stark Industries into their arsenal. I know what to do. Thank you, Uncle." Looks like old Howard's face. "This is nothing," the mysterious man on the other side said, and hung up the phone. Stark was silent for a long time in the dark. He poured himself another glass of whiskey and walked into the bathroom. Standing in front of the bathtub, Tawny held the glass of whiskey and slowly took a sip. The tiles under his feet began to sink. After the tiles were electrified, they glowed blue and formed a protective shield that formed an elevator that slowly sank into the ground. Tani descended with the elevator to the underground base. In a circular arrangement of cylinders, there were different models and complex styles of Iron Man armors. They were displayed like the statues of the 12 gods in the ancient Greek temple. The entire space was filled with the unique aesthetic of the combination of the spatial layout of the ancient Greek temple and modern technology. From left to right, in the cylindrical glass pillar that displayed the combat suits it was tall and sturdy, with a mechanical structure that provided great strength and endurance. The anti-Hulk armor was made of the golden metal adamantine produced in the Olympus divine realm. The projection of the glass pillar clearly shows the body data of Hulk and Dr. Bruce. The in-depth collection of genetic data is the theoretical precursor to the research of the anti-Hulk armor. If seen by his former Avengers comrades, Tony Stark will be seriously questioned and have a crisis of trust. He has been secretly collecting the body data of his comrades and friends, developing armors for them, and studying their technology to transform those armors. Next to the anti-Hulk armor is a set of armor very similar to the Destroyer. Tony Stark didn't know when he got the wreckage of the Destroyer destroyed by Thor in Mexico. Based on the technology of the wreckage and the data of Thor secretly collected by Tony, this set of anti-Thor armor was developed. Next to this set of armor is the classic pattern and tight-fitting design of the Spider-Man suit, as well as the spider-like sensor system and anti-spider sensor system developed using the body data of small spiders. This is the anti-spider armor. Collecting Captain America's data and using big data analysis to deal with the anti-American armor, it seems that it is not valued. It is the cheapest of all the anti-American series. It can be seen that it is a set of Mark plus a targeted auxiliary computing system. However, Stark doesn't know that Captain America has been double transformed and upgraded by the plague in Shenong because he was infected with the Doomsday virus. Tony Stark has to at least make an anti-Superman armor. Unfortunately, this version of the Superman serum doesn't support the kryptonite patch. Next to the anti-American armor is an even stranger set of armor. It has not been completed and is stored in an adaptive gravity system. This is the anti-Star God armor made from the wreckage of Sargeras and the wreckage of Ultron. Behind it is the anti-Exogod armor, the anti-Soviet armor, the anti-Starship combat armor, and the Prometheus armor developed using PIM particle technology. There is also the anti-Annihilator armor, anti-Devil armor, anti-Heaven armor, anti-Plague armor, anti-Angel armor, anti-Death armor, and the anti-Apocalypse armor, which was still being developed based on data, and the final design was still in the blueprints, the anti-Apocalypse armor, which was a combination of all of Tony Stark's cutting-edge technology. But Tony skipped over these powerful armors and came to the most unforgettable armor. If the Avenger is still here, he will be shocked. The Substar armor. Sargeras' body, the indestructible body of the Death Star's soul titan. It has returned to Tony's hands. After being possessed by Sargeras, it has changed beyond recognition and become more powerful. Sargeras and Sephiroth are both extremely powerful existences created by Chun Ong. Sephiroth represents the Star Soul, and it even became the main force of the Angel Legion of the Messiah's hand. And the Death Star Soul Sargeras is the complete opposite of Sephiroth, an existence that is opposite to each other. The body of death left behind by him is countless times more powerful than the prototype created by Asgard. It can be said that after Sargeras, the Substar armor has become even more powerful than the ultimate weapon Asgard has meticulously created, the Destroyer. It is not inferior to the ultimate power of Asgard, the power of Odin. To control such a powerful armor, one would need an extraordinary body. And in Tani's body flows the blood of heavy nuclear elements. He is the source of inspiration for Chun Ong to create the radiation blood race. He transformed his whole body into nuclear cells and fused them with the crazy transformation of nuclear energy. The reason why Tani has been decadent for 6 years is not only because Sargeras was born from the dark infection brought by his consciousness, but also because of the constant torture of nuclear radiation in his body. Although using nuclear bacteria as a sample, his body has a strong recovery ability and strength. The part of his body that has not been completely transformed and belongs to his original existence is constantly suffering from the torture of high concentrations of nuclear radiation. His body is undergoing violent cancer every day, but it is repaired by a strong recovery ability. The combination of cancer cells and nuclear cells gives him infinite power, but also makes him suffer endless pain. But now, all the pain is about to end. Tony Stark came to the Hadron Collider, secretly created by Stark Industries, and dug a huge tunnel to a depth of 56 kilometers underground, transforming the powerful energy of the Earth's core into rays. At any time, he can manipulate the collision of particles and change the substance of his body. Sir, I have to remind you, artificial intelligence, AI, Friday was worried or pretended to be worried. Our research on super-heavy elements is still in a state of near blank. Although the previous experiments synthesized the super-heavy nuclear stabilization island substance, which can exist stably for more than 1,000 years, we still don't know much about that strange substance form. You want to replace the elements in your body with super-heavy nuclear elements. The success rate is slim. Tani smiled coldly and said, "If it fails, then let me destroy it. Show me the blueprint of the super-heavy nuclear elemental life." Tani ordered. Legend has it that Messiah gave humans the fruit of life in the Red Sea, so that the ancient ape tribe evolved into humans, and the fruit of life, if my research is not wrong, is the life evolution equation. The equation obtained by S. H. I. E. D. They only cracked the surface of the equation. Only I found the secret of this set of life blueprints. This is the blueprint used by the Creator to create life, and it is the result of the research of life supplement. If the legend is correct, and the apocalypse is the Creator, then he also completed the life blueprints, which are called the Four Horsemen, sublimated to this level after he completed the life blueprints, the evolution equation. I only cracked a part of the evolution equation and deduced the blueprint of the super-heavy nuclear stabilization island creature. A blue creature appeared in front of Stark. It was abnormally tall, naked, and only the whites of its eyes were glowing blue like an energy body. It seemed to have substance, but also seemed to be an illusory body composed of energy. Tony exclaimed, "This body is a body that exists in an infinite quantum state. It's neither material nor energy. It can easily control any particle, know the past and future, and change its form at will. It's a perfect, invincible body. Only such a body can drive the anti-apocalypse armor. The life evolution equation is the fruit of life created by the apocalypse. I can't rely on it to defeat the apocalypse. Only the fruit of life and the fruit of wisdom can surpass the Creator. The anti-apocalypse armor was born from the fruit of wisdom, and the super-heavy elemental body was born from the fruit of life, the evolution equation. Only by combining the two can it surpass the Creator, surpass the apocalypse, and then destroy. The theory of the anti-apocalypse armor had not been perfected, and the research on the super-heavy nuclear elemental body had not been completed. It was still far from the ideal level in Tani's heart. However, today he was going to use the particle collider to destroy his original body and reconstruct his body with super-heavy nuclear elements. Although it would not reach the level of a quantum body for the time being, it would still far exceed his previous strength. He would use the low-level, super-heavy nuclear elemental body with the low-level anti-apocalypse armor prototype, the Child Star armor, and begin the journey to destroy the apocalypse. God exists, and he is an American. Chapter 1143. When he returned to the central battlefield of Wakanda, it was already in ruins. The tsunami that destroyed Bonanzana had left behind seawater that submerged most of Wakanda. But now the center of the battlefield was Bonanzana, and the remaining seawater here was frozen. The submerged concrete ruins were frozen in a huge block of ice, and there were icicles and ice blades piercing the sky everywhere. The ice here was extremely hard, comparable to the hardness of billions of years of permafrost in Antarctica and modern technological alloys. Even so, The ice was not flat, and there were countless traces of battle left on it. The layer of ice was about a dozen meters thick, submerging the top of the collapsed skyscraper. But even so, there were some deep ravines that completely penetrated the layer of ice. A broken iron chain was deeply embedded in the layer of ice. It was like a hot knife cutting through butter, melting the ice and sinking into the layer of ice. However, it was quickly frozen and trapped by the ice. Then, it was forcefully torn off from the tail. The body of a zealot mage fell not far away. He was pierced through the chest by an extremely thin blade and died on the spot. Looking at the shape of the wound, it was probably a samurai sword. The remains of a demon accompanied him by his side. The demon's chest had a large hole, and the wound was still flowing with a lava-like luster. The entire corpse was actually frozen by the strange cold power of the jade ice snow. From the wound, it looked like it was first frozen by the strange cold true power of the chaotic Heaven 10 rings, and then pierced through the chest by the high-energy laser. This was just an inconspicuous corner of the battlefield. There were more corpses like this in other places. The demon army was summoned from hell by the demon warlock Esteban. Together with the zealots led by Cassius, they formed the miscellaneous soldiers on the side of the saviors. Most of these miscellaneous soldiers were killed by technological weapons. From the wounds, most of them were high-energy lasers and positron cannons. One could imagine that Pot's new armor, Crimson, played a significant role in this. There are also the Atlanteans and Namor's guards. These blue-skinned soldiers with tridents that could shoot ultra-low temperature rays had fewer corpses, but most of them were killed by the shock. Powerful energy waves swept through them, causing these high-tech armed troops to throw their armor and throw away their helmets. And this was just a whisper from the Black Bat King. Potts and her new crimson armor, as well as King Blackbat, were the main force in wiping out the small fries. Zheng Shangqi used the environment after the tsunami and the power of azure snow to play a big role. There are also two unique marks on the ice. They were at the edge of the battlefield and covered a large area, but the damage was relatively small. The transformed Blade Warrior quickly skimmed across the ice. His body was rich in nuclear energy, and his nerve network had been transformed by sacred silver, providing him with a reaction speed that exceeded the physiological limits of living things. Light signals were transmitted through his nerves and received a rapid response from his brain. Nuclear blood. After several improvements by Chenong, the radiation energy in the blood had changed from highly toxic alpha rays, beta rays, gamma rays, and neutron rays to a relatively mild photon radiation. That is, a high-energy laser. It was pitiful to say that a vampire's blood was rich in light radiation, and his silver-plated blood vessels were like optical fibers. In order to reduce the lethality of the nuclear rays of radioactive materials on carbon-based creatures, Chenong had gone to great lengths. When heavy elements decayed, they would emit alpha rays, beta rays, and gamma rays from their nuclei. Alpha and beta rays emitted alpha and beta particle streams, which were too destructive to carbon-based biological cells. Chenong had no good way to solve it. Only gamma rays were essentially electromagnetic waves with a wavelength shorter than 0. 2 angstroms. Electromagnetic waves were the most widespread type of radiation in the universe. They were essentially light radiation. According to the different wavelengths, they were divided into radio waves, microwaves, infrared rays, visible light, ultraviolet rays, X-rays, and gamma rays. These different radiations were manifestations of different wavelengths of electromagnetic waves. Light in human cognition, long and short waves of communication, infrared and ultraviolet rays, and even X-rays and gamma rays, which are lethal radiation in the minds of ordinary humans, were all light of different wavelengths. They were all photon particle streams. In essence, they were all electromagnetic waves. Among the electromagnetic waves, there were gamma rays, which were highly destructive to carbon-based creatures. There were also harmful rays like X-rays, but the lethality was controllable. At the same time, there were also types that were completely harmless to the human body: visible light, infrared, ultraviolet, and radio waves. Compared to the first generation of radiation vampires who could accept any kind of nuclear radiation, the new generation of radiation vampires who could accurately detect the electromagnetic radiation in their bodies were much happier. Although the radiation emitted by the nuclear blood was of a high energy level, when it was not activated in the body, the radioactive rays would be converted into electromagnetic radiation with a longer wavelength. The photon streams released were visible light and X-rays, which were much safer than the old versions of alpha and beta rays. When activated, the nuclear blood radioactive substance in the body of a new generation of radiant blood clan members would emit high-energy electromagnetic waves, such as gamma rays. Their lethality was not weak at all, and when they were emitted through a specialized energy channel, they could still cause great damage to the enemy and provide powerful energy for themselves. However, the damage to the body would be reduced by a few levels. Shannon was also helpless. Although Blades was a vampire and a mutated species that was resistant to radiation, in terms of self-healing ability and body repairability, he was much weaker than Hong Fan, who was a true ancestor species that had been carefully modified and was a hybrid of 3 different origins. If he followed the original modification method, he would probably be poisoned to death by the radiation in his body as soon as the modification was completed. Fortunately, Chenang's technology was so powerful that he forcefully changed the technical route of the modification surgery according to the local conditions. He developed a new type of radiation vampires that focused on electromagnetic radiation with low lethality and energy level. Blades could now be considered a special subspecies of radiation vampires, electromagnetic radiation vampires. However, this way, he could not carry the Buddha's palm of radiation, the mass energy structure model of stellar radiation, and practice the first appearance of radiation, which could transform all matter into radiation energy. For Chenang, the biggest advantage of this modification surgery was that it did not cause much damage, but the biggest disadvantage was that he was too picky about his food after the modification. Originally, the biggest advantage of the radiation vampires was that they could transform all matter into radiation through multi-level ignition. They were not picky about meat or vegetables, and they could even absorb soil and burn it as nuclear material. However, when it came to the electromagnetic radiation vampires, they could only absorb certain nuclear materials. To be more precise, they could only absorb cesium-137 and cobalt-60. It was like how vampires could only eat Chongqing hot pot. Although it was not necessarily bad, compared to other types of food, they seemed to have missed the essence of Sichuan cuisine. The nuclear blood in Blade's body was boiling. The light energy it emitted was partly to strengthen the light signals in the nerves, and the other part was converted into high-energy gamma rays and released. It was as if he was holding a light blade in his hand. Gamma rays shot out from the adamantium samurai sword in his hand. They were as fast as light, an attack that could not be blocked. You could block and dodge the samurai sword coming at you, but it was impossible to block and dodge the light coming at you. Deathblade, on the other hand, was at a great disadvantage. The only reason he was not dismembered by the gamma rays was that he could use various methods to set up an energy shield around his body that weakened the rays, while the death blade in his hand could not touch the edge of his blade. This was because Blades was faster than him. He was light, or rather, most of him was light. Deadblade was entangled by Blades, and the 2 agility-type heroes opened up a battlefield for themselves. It seemed that Blades had the upper hand. He could occasionally shoot a gamma ray and kill 1 or 2 minions. Potts was wearing the new armor, Crimson, as the main attacker. She was equipped with enough technological weapons, such as high-energy laser beams and impact beams, single beam cannons, positron cannons, and antimatter rays. She could kill a large number of minions, and she could also pose a strong threat to the supervillains of the Salvation Alliance. However, the biggest shortcoming was that Potts lacked the decisive means to kill her opponent in one blow. It was difficult to install real, super-technological weapons on a set of armor, or perhaps Chenang did not want to install them on her. Therefore, she could threaten these people, but it was difficult to seize the opportunity to kill them. She lacked a lethal means like the Blade of Death. Little Spider was responsible for harassing them from the side. With his high speed and low attack and defense attributes, he could only tickle the few main forces of the Salvation Alliance. He also had to be careful of being ambushed by the three magic-type powerhouses. Wizard Wong was responsible for interfering with the spells of Demon Warlock, Cassius, and Ebony Maw. At the same time, his portal could also play a role in adjusting the formation. Overall, he was a support who was not strong enough, but still performed well. Zheng Shangqi and Lianhua worked together as the main attack meet shield. They fought in close combat, so the three magic-type enemies could not free their hands and feet. All in all, the situation was in a stalemate. Black Bat King had a fight against Ghost Rider and Namor, two powerful enemies. If it was not for his excellent equipment and his powerful sound wave imitation ability, he would inevitably be at a disadvantage. The reinforcements on Holy Shield's side had not opened up the situation for a long time because they lacked a character like Hulk and Thor who could make the final decision at the critical moment. They could not seize the opportunity to kill an enemy. Therefore, although the situation looked good, as long as the Salvation Alliance pulled out of the chaos, they could seize the opportunity to kill one of them through tactical adjustments. Whether it was Black Bat King's lack of magic resistance or Little Spider King's high agility and low defense. Although Potts could provide firepower suppression, his magic resistance was also too low. Although Blade's condition was good, his attacks on Deathblade could only accumulate damage, and Deathblade could kill him with the cooperation of his teammates. As time dragged on, the development of the situation became more and more disadvantageous for Holy Shield. Chapter 1144. The situation is not good for us. Potts said in the team channel, "We still underestimated the power of these aliens who call themselves the Saviors. They did not perform well in front of the Destroyer, not because they were not strong enough, but because the Destroyer was too strong. Perhaps the insurance investigator was right. The Destroyer is enough to deal with them, and we will only be holding them back. But now it's our turn to deal with them." Blade said coldly. He did not like the current China commander of the Holy Shield, because after he signed the modification agreement, he found out that the agreement had sold him out. If Hong Fan knew what he was thinking, he would definitely beat his chest and stomp his feet. "If you don't want it, we'll trade. They are just not familiar with us for the time being," Potts said. "When they become familiar with our combat habits, that will be the real trouble, and our advantage is that we are familiar with them. The Holy Shield has collected enough data for us to formulate a counterattack plan, but we don't have the means to make the final decision," Spider-Man said. "Even if our tactical deception is successful, we won't be able to find an opportunity to get rid of one of them and change the current strategic situation, and there's a possibility that they will seize the opportunity to kill one of us. Not to mention the others, that pointy-eared guy is very difficult to deal with, and the artifact in his hand is too powerful. Maybe our tactics do not need to defeat them." The silent Black Bat King spoke. For some reason, when he spoke with his hoarse and low voice, it gave people an inexplicable sense of trust. Black Bat King said in a low voice, "I have a plan. Open up our tactical assistance system. Before this, we have hidden some means to deal with them. In the next plan, they have to play a role of surprise." Black Bat King, who had been trained in the direction of a master tactician by Chan Ong intentionally or unintentionally, began to think of ways to use the detailed information provided by the Holy Shield to try to open up a gap in the Savior's Alliance. Wu Muhu has powerful psionic power. He can use words and thoughts to change people's subconscious and even reside in the minds of other living beings. His psionic ability can be transformed into powerful psychokinesis, and he can move objects with his mind, Black Bat King analyzed. The Black Bat Monarch analyzed, according to the data analysis of the Holy Shield, his weakness is that he is not good at dealing with non-living objects, and his body's resistance is very weak, compared to the Deathblade beside him, who has high resistance against cold, heat, electricity, radiation, poison, aging, and disease. Ebony Throat's body is very weak. He's not that much stronger than a human. His ability to adapt to the environment is not strong, So he is very afraid in front of the destroyer because the destroyer can easily resist his mind attack and can evaporate him with a random ray. The black bat monarch analyzed, "Therefore, Zheng, you have the highest chance of restraining him. Your spirit is very resilient, and you can create ultra-high and ultra-low temperatures. You can unknowingly lower the temperature around him. When he focuses on spirit attacks, his senses will become sluggish. When he realizes that his body has become sluggish because of a low temperature, his reaction speed and movements will become sluggish. Then you can freeze him with a wide area of super low temperature. But the timing must be right when we attack the others. Otherwise, the demon warlock and Cassius will have a way to save him." "I got it." Zheng Shangqi's eyes lit up, and the turbid true qi in his hand instantly changed from the most imposing and powerful Kunlun earth to the most flexible, ever-changing, and mysterious indigo blue sea. Under the impact of the rolling waves of true qi, a mysterious icy energy was hidden in it and wrapped around Ebony Throat's body. Ebony Throat did not feel that the hidden power of the strange cold was freezing him bit by bit. He was highly focused, constantly creating trouble for Potts, the Black Bat Monarch, and Zheng Shangqi. Like the white mist exhaled in winter, this faint icy mist began to condense on his body, and the slow and hidden cold quickly numbed his nerves. Ebony Throat always used psychokinesis to protect himself, and his body did not move often. This habit was also learned by the Holy Shield. The Black Bat Monarch formulated this plan, which was to use the method of boiling a frog in warm water to numb Ebony Throat's reaction. This tactic was useless against people like the Deathblade, who always fought in close combat and had a lot of exercise. This was because once their nerves were numbed, they would soon be exposed during exercise. At that time, no matter how stupid they were, they would notice that something was wrong. Only people like Ebony Throat, who protected their bodies too well, would ignore a little abnormality in their bodies. Cassius's body is very fragile. His reaction is not fast enough, and he was originally the weakest link among the saviors. But according to the analysis of the Holy Shield, his weakness is also known by Dom. As a worshipper of the Dark Dimension, after being swallowed by the Dark Dimension, his life form has changed and become more bizarre, which makes him difficult to deal with. If you still look at him with the eyes of a human, you will suffer a great loss, the Black Bat Monarch said. But his weakness is also very obvious. The Kamartaj wizards have set up 3 sanctuaries on Earth to prevent the invasion of evil forces from other dimensions. Although Cassius was once a member of Earth, after he was swallowed by Dom, his life form has also changed, and he no longer belongs to Earth. We could have used the power of the 3 sanctuaries to banish him. Wizard Wong took over the conversation, looked at the sky with a strange expression, and continued. But because of all the unexpected circumstances, Hong Kong's sanctum was moved to Mumbai, causing a flaw in the Kamartaj seal. Although a powerful dimensional lord like Dormammu is still unable to invade it, it's not a problem to protect a clan. So we can use some power to pull him out and banish him. Wizard Wong nodded. But we need to use the power of the Eye of Agamotto, and the only one who can use it is the new Supreme Wizard. The little spider swung its spider silk and looked around, extremely terrified. "Hey guys, are you talking about me?" No, I can't. I don't understand anything about magic. I haven't even graduated from university. I'm still a child, and I shouldn't bear a burden that doesn't belong to my age. I think you're very good, Wong. Why do you want me to be the Supreme Wizard? In the last Sorcerer Supreme change, Ancient One did not choose me, which means that I am not suitable to be the Sorcerer Supreme. Every Sorcerer Supreme is a wise man who can see through time. He, Strange, chose you. He must have discovered your unknown potential. To become the Sorcerer Supreme, you must not only look at your own struggle, but also consider the trend of history. Strange has decided to let you be the Supreme Wizard, and you are duty-bound. Mage Wong said solemnly, "I don't know about the others, but Strange only took 2 months to finish reading half of the books in the Kamartaj library. He is an unprecedented sage among the mages, but he couldn't even form a hanging ring gate when he first started. You might be able to do better." I don't have time to read now. The little spider looked nervously at the eye of Agamotto hanging around his neck and said, "How should I use this thing? By feeling?" Wizard Wong asked in a questioning tone. "By the course of history," Potts said. She stretched out her hands and blasted out an impact beam cannon, smashing the charging Ghost Rider into the ice, and the mechanical armor parts of the shoulder blades behind her suddenly fell off and rushed toward Spider-Man. The crimson metal rings grabbed Spider-Man's wrists and covered his palms, forming a gauntlet, and countless data flowed in front of Spider-Man. "Remote control isn't high-tech," Potts said. "There's no shortage of knowledgeable people in our headquarters. Isn't it easy to activate a divine artifact from thousands of years ago?" In the Holy Shield headquarters, Chun-Ong reached out and held the gauntlet that was projected in the void in front of him. The projection of the gauntlet was put on his hand. Chun-Ong moved it slightly, and Spider-Man's hands on the battlefield were pulled to do the same action. Chapter 1145. He then stretched out his hand and ejected a strand of carbon fiber fire-strengthened spider silk. This armor module was also equipped with a spider silk launcher that could synthesize hundreds of different types of spider silk. The spider silk hidden in the lava ball was pulled back by Chun-Ong. The demon warlock, who had transformed into a Balrog, let the lava ball hit him, and the spider silk also stuck to him. www.vod2. Chun-Ong controlled Spider-Man's legs to the ground, and the two armor modules' glove shouted together, "Pull back." Spider-Man immediately used all his strength to pull the Balrog over with hundreds of tons of force. Then Chun-Ong used the gloves to stimulate the spider's senses and controlled Spider-Man's legs to launch himself at the flying Balrog. Spider-Man nimbly climbed onto the Balrog's body, and the strengthened spider silk on his hands kept circling and binding. Under Chun-Ong's control, Spider-Man's figure was so fast that it was impossible to see. The armor gloves ejected sharp energy blades and pierced the Balrog's heart. The armor gloves penetrated the Balrog's body, and the strong electric current it emitted directly interfered with the Balrog's nervous system, destroying its ability to react, making its body twitch and unable to respond. Spider-Man slammed it to the ground, and the armor modules on both hands exploded with a powerful force, tearing the Balrog along the wound. Lava and blood spurted out like a waterfall. The demon warlock could only escape from the Balrog he had possessed, and appeared in the distance with a pale face. 5 short lasers appeared at the fingertips of the crimson gloves. Chun-Ong took off the eye of Agamotto on Spider-Man's chest, and countless streams of information were transmitted from the S.H.L.D. headquarters to the gloves. 5 high-energy lasers were inserted into the key structure of the eye of Agamotto and began to dock with its energy. The data returned by the docking was analyzed by the floating pyramid's brain, As Guming's military fortress, the floating pyramid's brain had a natural advantage in deciphering the ancient artifact, the Eye of Agamotto. Very soon, the Eye of Agamotto opened its eyes, revealing the gem of time at its core. The power of the gem was shaped into a complicated magic circle through the artifact that the great wizard Agamotto had created. The huge magic circle was projected with the small spider as the center. The green magic circle, with a diameter of almost a kilometer, kept spinning. Chun-Ong gently touched a rune, and a chain reaction occurred on the rune wheel, causing a part of the huge magic array to rotate by a small angle. Cassius secretly opened a portal that led to the top of the little spider's head. The portal was only the size of fist. His hand passed through the portal, and a transparent air blade slashed at the little spider's hands. Cassius grabbed at the eye of Agamotto. "Got you," Chun-Ong said faintly. Cassius suddenly found that his hand had returned to its original position a second ago. He was terrified. Ma Guan closed the portal and retreated, but soon, in less than a second, he found himself back in the same place. He was trapped in a 1-second time loop. Clang! Time trap activated. Wu Muhu also received Zhengshang's by Bing Xue with 120% of his power. The strong cold Zhun Qi instantly froze the space hundreds of meters around him. Wu Muhu found that his body had become stiff. He couldn't react in time, and his spirit force couldn't do anything either. He could only be frozen in the ice. The Deathblade General suddenly faced the Crimson Mech with its engine fully activated. A mechanical lock structure appeared in Boz's hand. The moment the blade wrapped around the Deathblade, it locked onto the Deathblade. The mechanical lock was stuck on the blade. The lock position began to eject the adamantite cutting device and the high-energy laser welding head. They surrounded the Deathblade. The adamantite blade and the laser blade began to spin rapidly after spraying the metal embrittlement agent. The Deathblade General was scared out of his wits. He began to desperately try to retract the blade. Boz grabbed the Deathblade with one hand and opened fire with the other. He only shot at the back of the Deathblade. High-energy laser beams, impact light cannons, positron weapons, and the Black Bat King sound waves were all shot at the Deathblade, which didn't dare to let go of its weapon because its mobility was destroyed. Speaking of which, it was quite pitiful. Under normal circumstances, the Deathblade would let go and retreat. After retreating a certain distance, the Deathblade would be summoned back from a distance. The Deathblade was the same as Mjolnir. They both had the ability to automatically fly back to its binder, but not now. His soul box was still being violently destroyed. In just a short while, the Deathblade's pole had become much thinner. The metal powder that had been cut off fell to the ground. His heart was trembling. For a moment, the Savior's alliance was held up by the Black Bat King's tactical plan. Only Namor, who was guarding the ice lump of the destroyer, was left. Namor and the Atlantean guards beside him had been guarding the destroyer to prevent the enemy from stealing the destroyer and turning the tables in an instant. Unexpectedly, the enemy did not try to save the destroyer. Instead, they took the opportunity to clean up the rest of the Savior's alliance. Now, the situation had changed in an instant. Boz was the first to focus fire. Countless laser beams gathered in that narrow space, dismembering the Atlantean soldiers and cutting the ice layer that trapped the destroyer. Zheng Shang's rosy afterglow sweep of the 10 rings of the universe was channeled into the ring. Countless fire clouds rose and fell in Namor's direction. The air instantly heated up, and the ice layer melted in large areas. The Atlantean soldiers' respiratory systems were also roasted by the high temperature, forming dense blisters. They were in so much pain that they lost the ability to resist. The small spider also used the time gem to trap Ghost Rider. He struggled to hold on, relying on his spider's sensing ability to maintain the power of the time gem. The others all went to besiege Namor. The reason why the Black Bat King did not target the destroyer was because the Holy Shield intelligence had analyzed that Namor, who was guarding the destroyer, was a very cunning and sensitive person. Strategic deception was very difficult for him to achieve. He would not ignore the biggest variable in this situation, the trapped destroyer. Therefore, he could only crush it with great strength in order to force Namor to give up the destroyer. Sure enough, after weighing the price he had to pay to protect the destroyer's seal, Namor decisively gave up the destroyer and chose a strategic retreat after realizing that he would not be able to hold on for more than 2 seconds. As the laser cut through the thick ice layer, the hot, rosy afterglow sweep burned on the destroyer's body. The dim flames behind the destroyer's visor instantly flourished, even becoming violent. The destroyer slowly lowered its head, and the flames behind its face pressed down as if they were accumulating power. Then, a blazing ray that could not be looked at directly erupted and enveloped its body, melting the ice layer instantly. Bonanzana's huge ice layer instantly melted. The destroyer slowly raised its head. It clearly had no expression, but everyone could only think of the ancient violent god of fire. They could all see the angry flames burning red from the gaps in its armor, as bright as a small sun. The Atlantean army felt a little suffocated. The destroyer turned its head to look at the Atlanteans who had sunk it into the water. It turned its head indifferently, and under Namor's horrified and angry gaze, the flames of the solar prominence shot out again, enveloping the side of Wakanda that was facing the sea. The remaining seawater of the tsunami evaporated together with the Atlanteans inside. The destroyer pounced and punched Ghost Rider's face. The The fist was enveloped in flames of tens of millions of degrees, and it instantly evaporated the skull along with the hellfire. It grabbed Ghost Rider's face, and the blazing solar prominence burned him to ashes. Although it was still possible for Johnny to be reborn from the ashes, that would have to wait until Mephitos got his soul out of hell. At this moment, the Destroyer who had truly become the Destroyer returned to this world. The situation of the Saviors had completely reversed, and they had to consider how to survive. Trapped in a time loop, Cassius, who had nowhere to escape, showed a look of despair. Ebony Throat, who was frozen in the ice, had a deathly pale face. The demon Warlock, who was in a slightly better condition, did not say a word and turned to flee. Even Namor showed a pained expression. Only Zheng Shang was smiling. Fortunately, he had cleared his name in time. There was nothing left for him to do. Chapter 1146. The release of the Destroyer plunged the alliance of rescuers into fear and despair, but it was not necessarily a good thing for Potts, the little spider, and the others. Please Baidu search. The Destroyer was originally the ultimate weapon of war, created by Gu Ming and the Pantheons. It was called the Destroyer, and naturally, it was not used to flaunt its power or conquer its enemies with courtesy and restraint. On the contrary, it was naked violence, the embodiment of war and destruction. It was a weapon, a tyrannical one, born to kill and destroy its enemies. Only such a weapon did not need any soul to control it, because the 9 great nations had jointly created it to kill and destroy. Apart from that, the self-will of all souls was a burden, and they only needed a complete weapon of war. Therefore, the actual use of the Destroyer was limited. At that time, Gu Ming and the Protoss of the 9 great nations felt that the threat of the celestial gods was too deep. Therefore, they almost poured everything they had into creating this weapon of war. At that time, Gu Ming, who had been injured in the Tower of Babel incident, was extremely sensitive, and the slightest movement would make them mentally sensitive. As a result, the weapon created was too violent, limiting the Destroyer's usefulness. After the celestial gods brought about their own destruction and provoked the disaster of Apocalypse, the Destroyer could only be used to guard Odin's treasury and educate the candidates for the God King. Apart from a set of operating systems, its body and core were abandoned in a remote star field, in a secret Asgard star system, turning into a normal burning star and a child star orbiting around it. Even if Chun-Ong had proposed recycling waste, he would have installed a weak soul to weaken its lethality. But now this weak soul had gone berserk. After the destruction of Wakanda, all that was left in Tekala's heart was the desire for revenge. The disappearance of the limiter installed in the Destroyer naturally meant that something big was about to happen. Chun-Ong watched leisurely from the side of the Holy Shield headquarters. Although the Destroyer was strong, it was nothing more than a tool in his hands. Potts and the Black Bat King thought that the Destroyer would go berserk because of the soul of Tekala in its body, but to Chun-Ong, it was just a joke. The ultimate authority of the Destroyer was in Odin's hands, and because the material created was part of the war, there was also a backdoor in Chun-Ang's hands. These two gods had complete control over the Destroyer. What was a mere mascot like Turkara to them? Without their tacit consent, what difference was there between being in the Destroyer's body and being imprisoned? It was just that other people didn't know the inside story, which was why they thought that the destruction of Wakanda had driven Turkara completely insane. In reality, the Destroyer had been ordered to go on a rampage, with T'Challa acting as a facade. The Destroyer broke free from the layer of ice and bathed in the flames of the solar prominence. Its entire body seemed to be flowing with lava, and its metallic body flowed with a dark red light that seeped through the cracks in the metal lines like a half-melted armor. It was very tall, and its body seemed to have grown explosively, reaching nearly 10 meters tall. He casually grabbed Ghost Rider, and the solar prominence spewed out from under his visor, burned it to ashes. Hellfire was also extinguished by the solar prominence spewed out by the violent activity of the star. The Destroyer looked around and completely evaporated Bonanzana's layer of ice, revealing the scorched, parched land below. Large tracts of land had melted into glass. It originally had no nose or eyes, and its face was burning with flames, but everyone could feel the mournful expression from the throbbing flames. The destroyer raised its head, and a thick ray of flame spewed out from under its visor, shooting straight into outer space. The roaring flame almost burned down the United States space station, and it even brushed past the Holy Shield's headquarters. The destroyer didn't move, but when it did, it was like an invisible line of fire. It easily broke through 9 times the speed of sound, instantly tearing apart the atmosphere of the entire Bonanzana ruins. The violent air tremors sent the little spider's body flying, and even Pot's crimson armor was impacted. The mecha's flight compensation system worked violently to maintain its balance. The Black Bat King's cloak rolled up and covered his face, and he needed to use his ability to stand. The destroyer first passed by Deathblade, and a golden light appeared on its palm, like metal glowing in fire. When it passed by the Deathblade General, it just slashed and cut the Deathblade in half. The cold aura of death emitted by the broken Deathblade gradually spread to Deathblade's body, making him feel his vision becoming more and more blurry. The warmth of life gradually left his body, and he became more and more powerless. He looked down and found that his immortal body was slowly turning into ashes. So this is death. Deathblade's lips wriggled, but in the end, he didn't have the strength to ask this question. In the end, his head also turned into a handful of ashes and dissipated. He really died completely, leaving only 2 broken pieces of his blade in the dust. Esteban had already run far away. He was hiding in the body of a black panther on the African savanna because he had a deep understanding of people's hearts. The prince of the Wakanda tribe, who worshipped the Black Panther totem, generally wouldn't hurt their totem easily. But he neglected the fact that Gatchula the Destroyer was no longer that Black Panther. He was just a destroyer. His senses easily locked onto the soul signal of the demon warlock. The destroyer spat out a fiery solar prominence in the direction of Esteban's escape. The intense line of fire instantly drew a deep scar on the African savanna that was not inferior to the Great Rift Valley in East Africa. The melted rocks and soil drew a deep ravine in the ground, and the Black Panther that Esteban had turned into had naturally evaporated. Cassius, who was trapped in the time trap, watched the destroyer approach. He desperately tried to escape, but after a second, he would return to his original place. The destroyer tilted its head and looked at him twice, then spat out a tongue of fire. Cassius, who had been evaporated by the super-hot solar prominence, opened his eyes in the darkness and was shocked to find that he had returned to his original spot. The others watched helplessly as Cassius, who had been evaporated, grew out of thin air again. At this time, Cassius was even more horrified. It turned out that even death could not cover the time trap. He could only cycle in that 1 second forever. This was a time trap that Chunong had personally set up by controlling the time gem. Naturally, it was somewhat different. Chunong had directly created a cyclical paradox in the original time. As a time trap, if the will of the universe could not erase Chunong's power, could it not erase Amir Doma's beloved? So Cassius had actually been excluded from time. Except for those who had witnessed that second with their own eyes, or those who could see beyond time, he would not exist in anyone's memory. He could not change anything here, nor could he come into contact with anyone. He was a constantly circulating vortex outside the river of time. He had to stay in this second until he was forgotten by the universe. Unless Chunong, who had created this trap, or the time gem liberated him. While the destroyer was killing in all directions, King Blackbat and Potts felt that something was wrong. The destroyer did not show any humanity at all. Everyone thought that it was Turkula who had been rescued. Although he would be very angry, if everyone worked together, they might be able to save Wakanda. That way, no matter how angry Turkula was, it would be controllable. But now things were a little out of control. Turkula was not the main controller of the destroyer, but only the limiter. Once the limiter was opened, it was almost impossible to shrink back. What had appeared now was only the destroyer carrying out the destruction mission, not Turkula. As the destroyer finished taking care of the others, it slowly turned its head to Namor. What they were most worried about had happened. The destroyer has gone out of control, Potts said anxiously. The Holy Shield was worried that it could not control the destroyer. Not really, so it put Turkula's soul in. That way, with Turkula's soul, the destroyer would take care of Bonanzana and would never lose control and cause harm to Earth. But now, Wakanda has been destroyed by the good people of Atlantis. The existence that restrained the destroyer has disappeared, and now Turkula only wants revenge. I'm afraid this weapon of war will completely go out of control and cause great harm to Earth. Potts looked at the new non-Great Rift Valley that had appeared on Wakanda's land. The eroded gullies showed that her worries were not unfounded. The destroyer arrived in front of Namor. It stopped abnormally. Everyone's hearts sank. The destroyer killing Namor now was the best situation. If Turkula had given submission before he went crazy, that would be the worst. A silent mind whisper was directly instilled into Namor's mind. Wakanda is my hometown. See, Prince, have you ever considered the consequences? You can slaughter, you can be brutal, you can be inhumane. You have destroyed the greatest meaning of my life. Now I want to ask you, have you ever feared my revenge? Turkula's message was played according to the program. Blood for blood, a tooth for a tooth. This is my final responsibility. Destroyer, destroy Atlantis. Kill everyone he cares about in front of him. Wakanda's blood must be repaid by the enemy. With my soul as the price, carry out this order. The destroyer rushed into the sky. It quickly rose thousands of meters high and looked down at the coastal areas of Eastern Africa. After crossing the Indian Ocean, below Australia was the South Pacific, where the Atlantis continent was located. Behind the destroyer's visor, an unprecedented solar prominence was erupting. The total energy was enough to evaporate half of the Pacific Ocean. Potts hurriedly contacted the Holy Shield headquarters. Turkula has gone crazy. He gave the destroyer an order to destroy Atlantis, and now the destroyer wants to destroy the Atlantis continent. This action will seriously threaten the nearby humans. We must stop him, Chenong replied. The headquarters has no more combat power. Odin still needs 2 minutes to stop the destroyer's spontaneous actions. Turkula paid a huge price to temporarily block our command system. We gave him too much authority. Potts was on the verge of breaking down. No one expected this to happen. After Wakanda is destroyed, I'm afraid Turkula just wants to drag the world down with him. King Blackback comforted. To be honest, I understand his behavior. If it weren't for Crystal and the others, when the Inhumans were destroyed, I'm afraid I would have died too. To fight against the destroyer, we don't have many people on our side. Now most of them are fighting the Swallowing Star emissaries at the edge of the solar system. Here at the headquarters, only Steve can... At the mention of Steve Rogers, Potts was silent. The captain has been infected with the Doomsday virus, so his condition is not stable. The new modification of his super soldier serum has temporarily suppressed the infection of the plague, but once he leaves the supervision and uses the power of the super soldier serum, it may, or should I say, will accelerate the infection of the Doomsday virus. When that time comes, only the original virus can save him. Chenong said. There's another way. Chenong added. Speak. Potts covered his face in pain. Use gravitational waves to stimulate the vibramine near Wakanda, activate the power left behind by the War Knights, and create a new apocalypse. The destroyer's underlying program sees the apocalypse disaster and the Celestials as its first enemies. It will give up on destroying Atlantis and rush back to fight the clone of the war god. But the price is that the destroyer may not be able to win, and we will have to face an even more terrifying enemy. Chapter 1147. Steve put on his old battle suit and came to the edge of the floating pyramid. Chenong sent him off. As the gates slowly opened, the low air pressure at high altitude instantly emptied most of the air on the spacecraft landing platform. The violent negative pressure caused an outward storm, but the two of them did not move. Neither Steve nor Chenong felt uncomfortable in the thin air. Please Baidu search. Chenong handed over the divine shield. but Steve waved his hand and refused. You don't want to bring a shield? Chenong suddenly laughed at himself. Well, now that you have a body of steel, you don't need to hide behind anything anymore. Steve took a regretful look at the golden divine shield with the eagle carved on it and sighed. Ever since I was infected and injected with the Superman serum, my 5 senses have become sharper every minute. I can hear sounds thousands of kilometers away, and I can also see in outer space. I can even vaguely sense the thoughts of the people walking by me. But I still can't see through you. Steve sighed. Tawny revealed the news of Hawkeye's family to the Skrulls. I know, Chenong said calmly. Steve looked up and said he couldn't stand the torture of the things in his head, so he transformed himself into a special state of quantum superposition and disappeared from my perception. But not long ago, he appeared in my sight. The destroyer did not get out of control at all, but you deliberately controlled it to get out of control. You did all this to make me stop it. And then meet Stark. Yes, and the reason why Stark transformed himself was also because of me. I planned the entire Battle of Wakanda, and I also know that you know, and I'm not afraid of you knowing. Chenong said, Stark can already see the future, but he still chose to step into the timeline I set. It's weird. I have created 2 characters that transcend the stage, but you, for one reason or another, have to follow the script. Stark wants to get the power to fight against the apocalypse. Otherwise, the more he knows, the more desperate he will be. So what if he can see the future? There is still darkness in front of him. It's just a pitiful repetition of death without being able to resist. So what if I make you Superman? The future I create is the only timeline where new humans can survive. Although you use the Superman serum to solidify the pure and kind side of your human nature and got rid of the threat of the door, you didn't even have the right to choose. Justice and kindness, this is a good thing. But he can only be righteous and kind. He's as pathetic as a puppet that's being controlled. The only weakness of the Superman serum is that it will magnify the positive side of your personality, making you so perfect that you're not like a normal person. Of course, if that's the case, then my transformation would have completely failed. An existence without a negative personality, or an existence with a negative personality that cannot defeat a positive personality, is already dead. I will not allow my creations to be so severely flawed. My greatest hobby is to create infinite possibilities. I don't want rigid things. That's why I infected you with the Doomsday virus. It's the only thing that can destroy Superman at the moment. It can shatter your rigid personality and then reshape it into an existence with infinite possibilities. But that's not me anymore. If I still have positive elements of my personality now, the me after shattering and starting over has nothing to do with the current me. When I liberate myself on the Doomsday virus, I will fall into complete darkness because I have to magnify the dark side of human nature to be reborn. That way, maybe I will become the greatest dictator, the apostle of destruction, Steve said. So what? What does that have to do with me? You'll get used to it. Completely destroying yourself sounds cruel, but you'll know when you do it. It's nothing at all. Even if you change beyond recognition, and you can't even recognize the past. As long as you accept the past, you'll still be you. The so-called self is just a false proposition in the format of information science. It's just a false definition of oneself by a mere 3-dimensional sentient being. For a long river, every wave is a part of it. Chen-Ong smiled slightly and said, when you go on a killing spree and don't even recognize your own family, you can call yourself the unjust Superman. After Steve and Stark's transformation was successful, they would come into contact with the dark side of Chen-Ong and even have doubts. But so what? Would they dare to say it? Would they say it and let all the new humans die? Superman could not do such a thing. The dark Tony Stark might be able to, but the future he saw made him not dare to do such a thing. He looked deeply at Chen-Ong, whose face was calm and who did not even change his smile after saying such a cruel fact. Steve rose into the air. He did not have a red cloak behind him, which made him look a little weird, especially since he did not use the classic flying posture of one arm soaring into the sky. Chen-Ong, who had created Superman himself, looked a little irritated, without a cloak to cover his buttocks. The superhero flying was a little too funny. Steve used a flying posture similar to a wingsuit, and the tights completely exposed the lines of his buttocks. Chenong turned back to the headquarters of the floating pyramid and ordered the staff next to him. Let the superhero image department design a cloak and let Steve wear it when he comes back. Say that the current flying posture is not elegant and will create ugly photos, which is not good for publicity. Chenong was not worried that Steve would not agree. As the publicity mascot of the early army, Steve had long been used to being arranged to design the image. On the helipad of Stark's mansion, Tawny, wearing only underwear and pale blue fluorescent skin, rolled his white eyes and looked at the sky. He peeked at countless future timelines and only saw darkness in front of him. He saw everything, but he was powerless to change it, which made his darkening even more serious. He saw the return of his nemesis, Sargeras, and the door of the human spirit. He saw him and his old comrade, Captain America, today's Superman, fighting to the death. He saw him and his ex-girlfriend, Potts, breaking up with a knife. He saw himself become the public enemy of all mankind. All his old companions stood up against him, and he saw himself powerless to stop everything from going to destruction. He even began to hate himself for being able to see all this. When you were powerless to change the future, the so-called seeing the future was nothing more than repeating the torture of fate over and over again. Tawny looked at the body made of quantum superposition of super-heavy nuclear matter, and black tears actually flowed from his white eyes. He endured the torture of the dark ending again and again, shouldered endless despair and terror, and looked directly at one nameless creature after another. In the end, the bottom line of his spirit that he maintained collapsed silently. So what if you loved someone? You had to watch her die in all kinds of strange and torturous ways in front of you. No matter how strong your love was, it would still be distorted. So what if he was Dr. Manhattan? He did not change the power of the apocalypse to retract the timelines, and repeated the complete despair and dark ending over and over again. Even if he was inhuman, he could still be driven to madness. Tony Stark raised the corner of his mouth, revealing a big, bright smile, but this smile had long been distorted by despair and darkness. Instead of sinking into despair in the future, it was better to face everything with a smile. No matter how crazy I am, I must never lose Tony Stark's sense of humor. Dr. Stark, the Black Bat King, is asking you to go home for dinner. A completely different set of armor appeared behind Dr. Stark. It was painted with black and green instead of the traditional golden-red color scheme. After the modification, this set of twin stars was slightly larger and belonged to the type of armor. Unlike the close-fitting design of the Mark model, this set of armor had the shape of an anti-Huck armor. It was no longer full of the industrial design of the previous series, but rough, ferocious, and full of murderous intent, like a hardcore armored car design. It had a kind of steampunk, cyberpunk design. If the previous sets of armor represented technology, interconnected information technology, and ergonomics, this new set of twin stars represented heavy industry, war weapons, heavy armor, and punk gothic. This was a new generation of design that completely subverted Stark's aesthetic, representing the aesthetics of killing that he had sunk into the dark side. Facing this new set of armor, Tawny's body turned illusory and sank into it. Chapter 1148. Looking at the strange armor that suddenly appeared, the Holy Shield and the others behind the destroyer were a little surprised. They did not know whether the newcomer was a friend or a foe. In fact, even Potts did not recognize Tony Stark in the armor because it was too different from his style. It's hard to imagine that this big iron shell contains the soul of a black man. If I were a designer, no designer would put a king in it. www.but.com, because it's a needless burden, whether it's a black man or a king. His strange tone and crude content made everyone feel a sense of déjà vu. Potts also felt an inexplicable sense of familiarity. This kind of cheap feeling inexplicably reminded her of a certain someone. However, she rejected this conjecture because although Stark was not stingy with his words, he still had a sense of propriety and would not touch on racial issues. Otherwise, as a public figure, Even if he was a capitalist, he could not afford to offend black people. In this country, you could kill black people in your basement for fun. You could make your company have no black people, and you could secretly create genocidal biological weapons. The premise of all this was that the public did not know about it. Stark's company had always done this well. Even if it was a black supermodel with good taste, Stark could still carve it. Swoosh! Even Blade, who had the fastest reflexes, could only vaguely see an afterimage. After his nerves had been surgically modified, he adopted a half-mechanical, half-biological design. His reaction speed was at the photon level, but the structure of his brain had not changed much, so it had not yet reached the quantum level. The armor did not even set off a trace of wind in the air. This did not set off any waves. He came in front of the destroyer and punched the degenerate shell made of the same material as the armor. Both used Asgard technology, or rather, used the same technology. Odin used it to create Thor's hammer, the first anti-apocalypse armor to fight against Ancient Snake, the Child Star, and also used it to create the shell of the destroyer. Although the Child Star anti-apocalypse armor was made using the technology of an older model, after Tani upgraded it, the details were different, but the level of technology was the same. The hammer smashed down heavily. The destroyer didn't even resist. Because Dr. Stark had used his ability as a quantum observer, he had interfered with the destroyer's algorithm from the microscopic level. With a strong wave of air, the destroyer had already spun towards the ground like a meteorite. But very quickly, the destroyer upgraded the algorithm and also activated the internal structure of the quantum algorithm, or rather, chaos magic. The constantly jumping quantum momentum quickly surpassed Dr. Stark's observations. In the past, all data and information were fixed data in Stark's eyes. They could not be hidden from him and could be easily modified and observed by him. Now, the destroyer's algorithm had become some chaotic data. In the destroyer's mind, there were countless emperors rolling dice. The destroyer spread its limbs and twisted its gravitational frame of reference. Its own huge gravitational force that could tear apart the Earth produced a huge repulsive force with the Earth, forcefully canceling out the huge kinetic energy and hovering in midair. The destroyer looked up at Stark, who was floating high in the distance. The flames burning under his visor emitted an imperceptible fluctuation. Potts finally recognized the person under the armor. She piloted the crimson mech and flew over. "Tani, is that you? Answer me." Stark's body emerged from the armor. His body was illusory-like energy. It was light blue, and he was naked except for a pair of underwear. Potts saw his current form and was inexplicably shocked. "How did you become like this? I should be the one to say that." Tani looked at Potts' new armor from top to bottom and said with some jealousy, "I didn't expect this. If you like this thing, you should have told me earlier. The new armor is not bad, but it's still a little lacking compared to mine. You know that domestic products are unreliable. They always love to copy. This is the one that was copied when I went there, right? Sending a child to copy my work, I have to say, well done." Chenang's voice came from the Crimson Mech's loudspeaker. That manual work didn't have a high evaluation. It just barely passed. His teacher has already seriously criticized him. Don't copy the work of a third-rate designer from a third-rate country. Copying third-rate will only make you fourth-rate, Chenang said. And the Crimson is a work of the Soviet Union, remember? Ivan, the one who invented the arc reactor with your father. When he returned to his country, he was not well received, so he could only come to the Holy Shield to become a designer. This is your new weapon. Tani pointed at the destroyer. It's an extra soul of a king. If you ask me, in his country, even a king is unnecessary, let alone a weapon. Tani laughed coldly. Potts found it hard to accept. Tekera is our friend. How can you say that? He's your friend. Tani said, I never make friends with feudal dictators. A king is unnecessary everywhere. So are the black people. Tani emphasized. Even more so for the black people's king. Let me see, has he finally brought down his country? If you ask me, it's really rare to be able to hold on for so long. That's why we found a king's soul to install in the weapon to lower its efficiency. If you want to reduce the lethality of a weapon like the destroyer, you have to find a leader for it, Chenong said with a smile. Tani snorted. Then he really didn't let you down. Chenong pulled the topic back and said, Anthony Edward Stark, we already know that it was you who sold out Hawkeye's family, and it was you who plotted against us. HLD. You took over the property of the vampires killed by the Holy Shield, expanded the size of your company several times, and stirred up trouble in the dark. But we don't care. Tani said, Do you believe that I can buy SHILD right now? President Trump already wants to package and sell this annoying agency. One day, you'll have to call me director. You can try. Chenong laughed. 8 trillion. What? The AIELD rejected the debt package plan of the interstellar banking tycoon Scrooge. In order to prevent him from selling out the entire United States, the Holy Shield applied for this excess fund. It has already become a bad debt for the AIELD. After all, it is meaningless for the AIELD to keep a planet's currency that can't even enter the interstellar threshold. As an important window for the AIELD to communicate with the countries on Earth, the Holy Shield can certainly apply for this fund. It was just approved the day before yesterday. The 8 trillion U.S. Treasury bonds and the foreign exchange reserves of the original FLD countries can be used as fund for the AIL's activities. Now we have acquired SHIELD. After all, SHIELD is subordinate to the World Security Council. Unfortunately, except for the United States, all the other members of the World Security Council have joined the AIELD. The United States was once SHIELD's largest financial supporter, and only 6 years ago, it obtained the main power of SHIELD. After all, people always prefer the boss who pays their salary. But now SHIELD has joined the Holy Shield and obtained the eligibility to apply for 8 trillion funds. A spy organization has obtained autonomy and funding. Will it still be controlled by a mere Congress or the president? Wrong. Now the Holy Shield is acquiring the United States through SHIELD's resources. Now SHIELD has obtained the right to operate the assets of the AIELD frozen by the United States. Let me think. Now we seem to be the second largest shareholder of the Stark Industries Group. Tani, you are too poor. You're like a rich man for the backwater of Somalia. When you leave the Earth, you can't even afford a small spaceship because they don't recognize you. Dollars. Even compared with the Holy Shield, who is on Earth dealing with Earth's internal affairs, you are as poor as the richest man in a second-tier city. You don't deserve to be called the richest man. Chenong said, Go home, wash up, and sleep. Tani, wait for the notice of our acquisition of your company. By the way, your behavior has made Hawkeye very angry. He has decided to accept the transformation surgery and kill you with his own hands. Steve is also on his way. He wants to wake you up with his own hands. Don't ask why you can't predict the future of the Holy Shield and observe the affairs of the Holy Shield. I just applied for a super photon radiometer with the AIL. Chenong hung up the communication, and Tani looked up and said, This is why I don't use the products of authoritarian countries. They will install back doors and scrupulously. You shouldn't accept their armor. If you want it, I'll give it to you. Potts said, Is what he said true? Tani said indifferently, What is true? You betrayed Hawkeye's family. I didn't betray them, and they will die. Everyone will die. It doesn't make sense. Stark's feelings were cooling, and he replied without guilt, If there is a benefit, yes, I will do it. Potts unfolded the wing-shaped high-energy laser generator behind him, and countless blazing white laser rays converged into one and passed through Tony Stark's chest. After Chun-Ong finished speaking, the destroyer no longer froze in place as if it had malfunctioned. It instantly tore through the atmosphere and rushed toward Tony Stark, but Tony ignored it. The hot prominences shot toward Tony's position. The range of the rays was very large, including Potts. The temperature of tens of millions, hundreds of millions of degrees could evaporate everything in an instant, but Stark still looked in Pot's direction. It was not until the super-hot ray storm approached that he turned around and stretched out his right hand. The Child Star armor on his back also stretched out its hand toward the direction of the ray attack. The gravitational anomaly blocked the path of the ray and created a small black hole. The huge gravitational force caught all the rays and trapped them inside, unable to escape. The adaptive small gravitational non-interference zone swallowed all the prominences, but did not interfere with the Earth's gravitational system in the slightest. This was because Dr. Stark had cut off part of the range of application of the gravitational direct medium for mass generation. Little Pepper, all of us will die. Survival or destruction, there is no meaning. You will understand this one day. Chapter 1149. The real battle began before the two met. Tony Stark, who had become a super-heavy nuclear creature, had a body composed of the elements in the stable island of super-heavy nuclear elements. Because the nuclear mass of the elements was too large, its physical properties were different from any known matter. This was the intermediate state of evolution into a quantum creature. Dr. Stark created a limited quantum body with super-heavy nuclear elements, and it was only one step away from the ideal, infinitely powerful anti-apocalypse armor, the infinite quantum body. Because the super-heavy nuclear creature derived from the evolutionary equation of Apocalypse's creation of life could not defeat Apocalypse. Only by transcending the evolutionary equation of life itself could there be such a possibility. The Superman serum used by Steve was another transformation of Chun-Ong Apocalypse used the Four Horsemen to verify the possibility of all life evolution in the universe. It was not that he could not create other creations like the Four Horsemen, but it was meaningless to create other creations. The known evolutionary route had been covered by the Four Horsemen and the successful completion plan of life modification, Messiah Apocalypse. Creating other creations would just be repeating itself. This path that covered all possibilities of life, evolution, and reproduction was called the evolutionary equation of life. The complete version of the evolutionary equation was in the hands of Messiah. Even the Four Horsemen did not have a complete version, because the Four Horsemen could not cover each other's path of life. Only Messiah, as the product of the completion plan, combined all the paths represented by the Four Horsemen and obtained the complete evolutionary equation of life designed by Apocalypse. So Messiah was also the creator. He could create all life and understand all possibilities of the development of life in the universe. So he could create apostles, angels, and even learn about Apocalypse. He fed the apes the fruit of life and the fruit of wisdom, created the native humans of the Marvel world, and turned Eve, a tribe of ancient apes out of Africa, into humans in the Red Sea. But any life created by Messiah could not surpass the path of the Four Horsemen. Only he was a creature that surpassed the path of the Four Horsemen. In a sense, Messiah did not master all the evolutionary equation of life, because he could not create himself. Only Chun Apocalypse could create everything, including Messiah himself. This was the ultimate secret of life in the multiverse. The Messiah held the ultimate of life. Meanwhile, the evolutionary equations obtained by other life forms were merely experimental data left on Earth when the Apocalypse was researching the end of life, including the early Four Horsemen's evolutionary data, and attempts in other directions. Before the completion of the X-Men Universe Completion Project, the various factions, in other words, the present ancient civilization, had tried their best to collect it. Some of them, after coming to this universe, were recorded in ancient relics and cultural relics. Then it was obtained by the archaeological S.H.A.L.D. and then fell into the hands of Tony Stark. One could imagine how complete the equation of life evolution in Tony's hands was. After S.H.I.E.L.D. created the ancient serpent, they obtained some knowledge from the Apocalypse. They collected information left by the ancient serpent, including the self-transformation high-tech martial arts, the transformation surgery, and the relics left by Skynet. Part of the knowledge retained by the 9 realms of Asgard was barely put together into a complete blueprint. Then the genius scientist, Tony Stark, analyzed some routes on the blueprint. All existences under the existence of Chun-Ong knew the complete equation of life, but they just didn't want to remember it. Because of Chun-Ong, even Chun Apocalypse was willing to believe that in the endless universe and space-time, there must be secrets of life that were not covered by the equation of life evolution. What he concluded was not the ultimate truth of life, but an approximate relative truth. In order to avoid these relative truths limiting the possibility of creating life, other Chun-Ong chose to remember the principle of the equation of life evolution itself and chose to forget its specific form, retaining his ability to think beyond the equation of life evolution. So unfortunately, Dr. Stark surpassed the part of the equation of life evolution that he knew, but he only deduced the part of the equation of life evolution that SHLD did not even surpass the part of the equation of life evolution that the Republic knew the most among all the ancient civilizations. What he didn't know was that the so-called infinite quantum body had long been a mature model of the dimensional warriors of the Republic. In the war between the Revolutionary Alliance and the Four Horsemen in other parallel universes that were collected and destroyed, the Republic had long learned the skills of their enemies and pieced together a large part of the equation of life evolution. This formula was not inferior to the possibility of life represented by a single Four Horsemen, or rather, the completeness of the equation of life evolution. It was known as the Blueprint of Descent. It was the biggest secret of the Academy of Life Sciences of the Republic. The Superman serum that Steve strengthened was actually a path of intersection between pestilence and famine. It also did not surpass the equation of life evolution. Its essence was actually Sephiroth in another sense, the outflow of divinity. He was the equation of life evolution mastered by famine, infinite, which meant the ultimate of infinite evolution. After combining with the genetic mimicry ability of the Skrulls, it gave birth to the Doomsday Virus. The life evolution equation mastered by pestilence, transcendence, which meant the upgrade and degradation of the essence of life. In other words, the life evolution equation mastered by famine, infinite transformation of the super soldier serum, carried the power of the flow of divinity. The angel represented by Sephiroth was reduced to a human through the content of the Akaba Tree of Life. The Superman serum was to reduce the soul of a star to a human, or to upgrade the soul of a human to an angel, so that the Doomsday Virus could adapt and transform it. Fortunately, this process was not difficult, because when Messiah created humans, she left a back door. There was a door in the human soul that led to the bottom of human consciousness, the sea of data and information that was completely chaotic. In the chaos, Eve had eaten the fruit of life and the fruit of wisdom created by the Messiah, which meant that all humans added together were multiple angels. This meant that as long as Roger's soul went behind the door and returned to the common sea of chaos of all human consciousness, he would be able to use his consciousness to transform and solidify his personality. His positive emotions would be magnified infinitely, and he would be able to withstand the impact of chaos and obtain the life evolution equation left behind by the Death Knight behind the door of consciousness, soul, which meant the power of the unknown miracle of life. Retrieving the half-angel status of humans when they were created by Messiah, elevating the consciousness to a higher dimension, and adapting the body with the power of famine. An infinitely evolving body, a soul of a higher dimension, harmonizing the two, elevating the transcendence of the essence of life. This was the secret of Steve Rogers' Superman. This was the essence of the Superman serum. This essence still did not surpass the possibility of the Four Horsemen, nor the life evolution equation of Messiah. Tony Stark, on the other hand, had the ability to change reality, modify the timeline, and transcend cause and effect. There was also a body that was not material, nor was it energy, but closer to the essence than the two, returning to the origin of all parallel universes. At the time of the Big Bang, the dimension was lower than the particle, and all parallel worlds intertwined and shared a low-dimensional quantum body. The dimension of his body was lower than this universe, reaching the state of intertwining parallel worlds and multiverses in one dimension. Time was the change of matter, and there was no time and no change in the lower dimension. So all the universes in the timeline shared a portion of matter. Even all parallel universes, all the possibilities of a universe, used a portion of matter in the lower dimension. So Dr. Stark's body could not be harmed, could not be changed, could transcend the past and the future, and could go to all parallel worlds. The origin of the multiverse was the same, and all timelines had a starting point. That was the extreme point during the Big Bang. There was no time, no timelines, not even parallel universes, and there was only one matter there, which was the zero-dimensional state. Then the Big Bang occurred, and parallel universes were divided. But obviously, neither matter nor energy would suddenly appear, but the low-dimensional matter at the bottom showed different states when it reached the higher dimension, and this was the material foundation of the multiverse. Therefore, the symbol of the division of the multiverse was the low-dimensional matter at the bottom. As long as it shared a portion of low-dimensional matter, from zero-dimensional to one-dimensional matter, it belonged to the same universe. And super-heavy nuclear matter could show the state of matter from the four-dimensional attribute to the one-dimensional state. Because of its unique nature, super-heavy nuclear elements had the power to confuse the fourth dimension, which meant that super-heavy nuclear element matter could affect its past, and the changes of super-heavy nuclear element matter in the present would also change its past nature. Take a thought experiment as an example. A stone of super-heavy nuclear element was carved into a stone statue. Then the past of the timeline, it might change its state and become a blurred image, but with a little processing, it could become a stone statue. Or if this stone was crushed, then this stone might have shattered more than 100,000 years ago, and if it was examined, the traces of shattering would be very old. If super-heavy nuclear elements were used to create a frog, then it might have appeared in the age of dinosaurs. It might even be possible to dig out another frog from the coal seam during the period of the coal-making movement and accidentally get trapped in the coal seam millions of years ago. Then, it would be discovered that the two frogs were essentially the same. If one was harmed, the other would suffer the same injury. There might even be a time error, and if one frog was injured a few hours later, the same injury would appear on the other frog's body. Stark used this principle to create his own body with super-heavy nuclear elements, allowing his consciousness to appear in the super-heavy nuclear elements of the past, covering the past timeline, and then using the soul, a high-dimensional existence. With this projection, his body would be reduced to the lowest dimension of matter. Through the timeline, it could even affect parallel universes. That was why Dr. Stark couldn't be destroyed. Altering three-dimensional matter wouldn't be able to harm low-dimensional matter, and he would be able to duplicate himself. This was because Stark wasn't the only one at the same time. He could be countless. Even if he was one, he could still be 10,000. Altering karma wouldn't be able to harm him. Even if he returned to the past and murdered Stark's mother, he would still appear again. There was no need for any karmic connection. That meant that Stark's mother, who was killed, could still give birth to him. He could decompose and reassemble his body at will, because to him, this was only a change of shadow. His body, in reality, was the projection of the low-dimensional body in the higher dimension. He could know the past and the future, change time, and create life. He was a cheat. During Apocalypse, scientists discovered the laws of the universe, the underlying code, then used the laws to find a loophole and recorded it, and then used it by third-rate scientist Stark to create a cheat, the anti-apocalypse armor. And Steve Rogers used the cheat provided by Chun-Ang Smuff, the Superman serum. This battle could also be called the Battle of the Gods, to a certain extent. Coupled with the script program, The Destroyer, jointly produced by the ancient civilization and controlled by Chun-Ang, it was better for ordinary players not to play. This multiverse could no longer accommodate a clean player, and the game experience could be said to be extremely poor. Here, the 5 great gods of the multiverse's server providers and operators strongly condemn Apocalypse Studios for destroying the game's balance and abusing cheats. They also provide other paying players with auxiliary scripting programs, which is to say, automatic AFK and monster fighting. Free players, please top up money to improve the game experience. If you don't have money to play, then so be it. The parallel world of the multiverse, that is, the server kept shutting down, was mainly due to the virus installed by Apocalypse, the four horsemen of Apocalypse, attacking. Chapter 1150. The fundamental state of matter remains unchanged. All the changes in time, space, and the state of matter are like a dream, unmoving. Tony Stark punched Steve's lower abdomen, crossing the river of time, through all parallel universes, and hitting the bottom of matter that makes up Steve Rogers. If the line of sight is raised to the current level of the two, it can be seen that this punch has passed through countless times and arrived at the moment when Steve's mother gave birth. The little baby slipped out of the birth canal, and Stark punched the baby's lower abdomen, turning him into a mass of flesh and blood. Young Steve was very thin. He was holding a glass of milk and sipping it. Dr. Stark's punch went against the river of time and hit him right in the heart. The little boy was instantly split in half. Steve was still an embryo. He was shattered into a mass of flesh and blood in the womb. When Steve was in puberty, he looked at a hot woman's pictorial and slowly took off his pants. At this time, this punch appeared on his body, and his flesh and blood splattered. When Steve joined the army, Dr. Elgin was just about to talk to him when he was suddenly slapped in the face with blood. When he was being transformed, Steve was lying in the instrument. His body became very strong, and he was sweating profusely. The Hydra people suddenly shot at Dr. Elgin, and the scene was in chaos. At this time, Steve and the instrument suddenly exploded into two pieces. In the parallel world, the past, and the future, all Steve had a fist mark that penetrated his lower abdomen. The mighty law of cause and effect surged towards Steve's current body one after another, trying to completely obliterate his existence. The timeline began to move backward from the time when Steve was still a fertilized egg. All Steve disappeared one by one along the veins of time, from the past to the present, and they no longer existed. There was no Captain America in the world. In World War II, Hydra met Dr. Howard Stark, who shouldered the responsibility of Captain America. Dr. Howard Stark, wearing the star-striped suit, was not only an inventor and scientist, but also joined the Army during World War II, wearing the self-made exoskeleton star-striped suit, and became an American doctor. He led the Howling Commandos to fight Hydra, lost his best friend Obadiah Pakistan in the battle, defeated the Red Skull, created S.H.I.E.L.D., carried forward the Stark Industries, and became an American idol. All traces of Captain America were replaced by others. Apart from that, nothing has changed. In New York, a museum dedicated to his memory displayed a mechanical structure. It was a thick exoskeleton suit painted with star stripes. The commentator vowed, "This is the suit left behind by Captain America, Howard Stark." During World War II, Captain Howard invented the exoskeleton suit and changed the form of war. Captain America wore the constantly updated Captain America suit to defeat the Nazis and maintain democracy and freedom. The second-generation Captain, Anthony Edward Stark, has inherited his father's will. In the other half of the museum, a Mark model armor is displayed, but the classic red-gold paint has become the star-striped flag, and the label below reads, Second-Generation Captain America, Iron Man. In the archives of S.H.I.E.L.D., a top-secret file reveals the cause of Captain America, Howard's death. The Soviets found Obadiah, who accidentally fell into the canyon, mechanized his whole body, and transformed him into the Winter Soldier, Ironmonger. In a confrontation between the United States and the Soviet Union, in order to prevent Howard from developing the next generation of exoskeleton suits, the Soviets sent the Winter Soldier, Ironmonger, to assassinate Howard. On Howard's way home, the two fought. Howard, who accidentally discovered the true identity of the Winter Soldier, was shocked and did not kill him. Unfortunately, he was killed by Obadiah. During the Vietnam War, Tony Stark was kidnapped by the North Vietnamese, who wanted to obtain the results of the exoskeleton suit. The Soviets once again sent Ironmonger to help the North Vietnamese, but Tony Stark, who knew the truth, used the resources of the North Vietnamese to create the second-generation mecha, Mark I. He destroyed Ironmonger and became the superhero, second-generation Captain America, Iron Man. The timeline was completely changed, and the correction force that followed, the magically modified timeline, was about to completely obliterate Steve Rogers. However, Rogers, who did not have the past, did not waver at all. He let the correction force obliterate him, but it was like a virus that penetrated deep into the bottom of the system. As an antivirus software, the correction force could not obliterate him at all. Stuck at this step, the correction force had no choice but to modify the past timeline in order to ensure that there were no bugs in the universe. In the past, a planet inexplicably appeared in the galaxy, Krypton. During the apocalypse, fearing the power of the four horsemen of the apocalypse, the rulers of Krypton decided to destroy their own civilization to seal the doomsday virus that was destined to destroy the Krypton civilization. They knew that all the civilians on Krypton had been infected with the virus. In order to ensure their own survival, they decided to blow up Krypton. Before the explosion of Krypton, Krypton's civilian scientist, Jor-El, put his son, cockroach Carl Clark, into a spaceship and sent him to Earth. The spaceship he took finally landed in Kansas. Little Clark was adopted by the farm owner, Rogers, and was named Steve Rogers. When he grew up, he joined the Planet Daily and chose to become a reporter. All of this happened in the entire timeline from the perspective of the fourth dimension. This behavior that changed the past of the entire universe alarmed all the existences in the universe who could see the fourth dimension, and all their eyes were drawn to the sky above Wakanda at this moment. From the perspective of humans, it was just Tony Stark who punched Steve. However, after this punch, the two of them changed their clothes. Steve no longer wore the classic star-spangled uniform. Instead, he wore a red cloak with a triangular S on his chest, while Tony Stark's dark green armor was covered with star-spangled stripes. All these changes were not noticed by Potts and King Blackbat, who were watching from the sidelines. Only Little Spider, who had the Eye of Agamotto and was protected by the power of the Time Gem, was not affected by the correction power. He opened his mouth wide and looked at the two people who had changed their clothes in an instant. He said in horror, "Why did Captain change his armor? Why did Mr. Stark paint the star-spangled stripes on the outside of his armor?" Steve's eyes shot out a high-energy ray that penetrated Stark's armor, but Stark did not care about the huge charred wound that appeared on his chest. In less than a second, the wound was refreshed and disappeared. Hoping to hurt Stark with the material means of this universe was like hoping to kill someone with innuendo. Stark's body in the three-dimensional universe was just a projection of his real body made of low-level matter. Stark only needed to refresh himself to make all the changes in this dimensional matter disappear. If Little Spider knew the truth, he would definitely shout, "Referee, someone has unlocked his health." Potts roared, "You still call him Captain America? He has betrayed the teachings of his father, Captain Howard, and chosen to betray the honor of the Star-Spangled Flag. Not only did he kill Hawkeye's family, but he also wants to kill Superman." Superman? Little Spider looked confused. Superman fought with Stark in order to protect this world. They were the two best leaders of the Avengers, but they started a civil war. Black Bat sighed. "Unfortunately, I let Stark take away the kryptonite and gave him the tactics I had developed to deal with Superman." The chest area of Stark's mecha slowly slid open, revealing a stone that emitted a green light. His palms were inlaid with two red kryptonite. Steve Rogers was illuminated by these three stones, and he felt his strength drop a lot. His whole body became weak and powerless. Although you can ignore determinism and the law of cause and effect, and still survive after I erase your past, you ignore my real means of targeting you," Stark said slowly. "In the process of recreating my origin in the universe, you modified reality and added a piece of information about kryptonite." Roger smiled. "I have no weaknesses, so you personally created my weaknesses. In modifying reality, you added three weaknesses to me. First, the source of my power became the yellow sun. Second, I am afraid of kryptonite. I will lose my power in the radiation of kryptonite. Third, I am infected with the Doomsday virus. After overusing my power, the infection will deepen. Once the infection reaches 100%, I will become another Doomsday. But only the third weakness is real. Rogers said calmly. So the kryptonite makes me weak, and I will lose my power if I lose the sun. These are just illusions you added to me when you use the universe to modify me. Although it is real to the universe, as long as I don't believe it, it is invalid. With that, Steve became strong again, and the weakness caused by the kryptonite disappeared in an instant. Steve looked at Tony Stark and said, "But these 2 points were just to deceive me and deliberately let me discover them, so that I would ignore your real plan. You modified the timeline and made me become Superman 20 years in advance. This way, the infection of the Doomsday virus in my body will greatly increase. Now, you have found a way to deceive my senses so that I can't feel the corrosion of the Doomsday virus, but in fact, I am already on the verge of being completely infected. In about 3 months, I will lose control, and once I use my ability, it will be much faster. And this is my own weakness. I can't deny that this is your real killer move. If I go all out, there will be about an hour left, but that is enough." Dr. Stark said, "Both of us know everything about the other. We can know the secrets of each other's particles at a glance. We cannot be defeated at all. I can't hurt you, and you can't hurt me. Although we are both strong enough to easily destroy a planet, we can't destroy each other. But I am different from you. I am perfect, but you are born with flaws. My quantum body cannot destroy your Superman body, but your Superman body can self-destruct, and I only need to create this condition. But my quantum body does not have such flaws. You can't kill me in an hour. So, you've already lost." Clark Rogers. Chapter 11:51. Rogers glanced at Potts and the others below, then raised his head and said to Stark, "We need to change the battlefield." "You want to change the battlefield?" Stark sneered. "Hypocritical Superman. But I have no objections. Let's go to space." Stark could not care less about the lives of the Black Bat King, the little spider, and the others, but he still cared about Potts. Moreover, Earth was the territory of the Human Revolutionary Alliance. As for this mysterious civilization from another universe that was the enemy of the apocalypse, Stark could not figure out their true strength, so it was better to avoid Earth. His figure flashed, and he appeared in the void of space 600 million kilometers away from Earth. For the entire solar system, Earth was as small as a speck of dust, let alone 2 mere humans. Steve and Stark did not seem to be human anymore. They came to this battlefield that was too vast for their bodies. In the void, it was dark and cold. Stark had also sent the destroyer here. He punched the outer shell of the destroyer, smashing it into an icy meteorite and sealing it. The icy meteorite, the size of the Tibetan Plateau, was like a small comet, shuttling through the void of space. Stark punched its past, sealing the destroyer in the meteorite, erasing this part of history. The destroyer was powerful, but it also had a fatal flaw: Turkula. Stark might not be able to deal with the destroyer, but he could definitely plot against it through Turkula. Through Turkula's soul in the destroyer, Stark returned to the past, changed the state of Turkula's soul, and made his soul into an information bomb. He detonated it at the critical moment, creating an opportunity to interfere with the destroyer for a moment, and then freezing the destroyer's operations, easily sealing this troublesome enemy. The destroyer was frozen in the core of the meteorite 50,000 kilometers under the ice, flying in the direction of the distant Earth. Superman Steve looked at Stark's position and launched an attack. His eyes shot out red laser rays, and his eyeballs burned like stars, but upon closer inspection, these eyeballs were like a small spatial lens structure, focusing the radiation of stars millions of light years away through the pocket universe into his eyes, and then emitting highly condensed photon rays, and even some of them were super photon rays. The red laser brushed past the huge, icy meteorite that sealed the destroyer, easily splitting the meteorite the size of the Tibetan Plateau in two. But as it headed for Stark, it shone on the anti-apocalypse armor, leaving deep marks of corrosion on the degenerate armor. Stark, however, did not care, allowing the laser to create dazzling sparks on his body. After dozens of seconds of focusing, the laser finally pierced through his armor and shone on his body. The blue energy form easily absorbed the red laser energy from Steve's eyes like a sponge. Stark gently brushed his right hand over the armor, and the melted wounds on the degenerate armor immediately healed. He looked up and said, "You want to kill me in an hour with this? I can bask in this light until the universe explodes and my skin won't tan. Steve, if you want to hurt me with this, you might as well expect me to move to the place where a supernova exploded and bask in a gamma-ray burst. If I don't wear sunscreen, who knows? I might die of skin cancer," Steve said calmly. "You are accelerating the movement of the fundamental particles that make up my body, and by accelerating the movement of the particles, you speed up my own time. In 1 second, you have accelerated the fundamental particles that make up my body to 100 years later. You are hoping to speed up the corrosion of the day doomsday virus through this. But it doesn't seem to work." Stark frankly admitted his little trick. "As long as my will denies it, it is ineffective," Steve said. "The fatal threat of the day doomsday virus is never physical, but in my consciousness." Steve pointed to his brain. "By erasing my past and modifying my corrected origin, you have shaken my will and deepened the corrosion of the day doomsday virus on me. But the same method will not work on Superman a second time." Stark sneered. "I can fight you like this for a year, and you will become a madman next month. Me becoming a madman will not do you any good. On the contrary, the day doomsday virus will destroy you." Rogers sighed. "Then you can admit defeat," Stark said stubbornly. "Anyway, don't expect me to admit defeat first. You want to get those infinite raw stones and embed them in your armor to help you create the complete anti-apocalypse armor you want as soon as possible." Rogers said, "But even if you get all the infinite raw stones, you will not be able to defeat the apocalypse. You will only drag everything into destruction. I have seen all the futures. The so-called universe overlord, Thanos, picked up a glove full of stones and was easily killed by a part of the apocalypse's War Knight's body. I saw the so-called 5 gods being slaughtered by the apocalypse's men. I saw the destruction of countless parallel universes. I have failed in all of them. Only I, who picked up the 6 infinite raw stones, did not appear in my vision. I am willing to believe that the future may be different. I am willing to try. I have never seen the future," Steve said, "because the future I see is the most fake thing in the universe. A fixed future will only make people lose the strength and determination to act. It will make people lose hope. You only know how to say things that sound nice, but are actually useless, as if you were a lie created by those propaganda machines." Stark was extremely resentful of Steve's attitude. He scolded, "You don't know anything. You only know how to create those nice things. The so-called dream, the so-called American spirit, are all lies made by politicians and generals. A nice bubble. Those who do not know how cruel the truth is are not qualified to speak." Stark angrily squeezed Steve, directly destroying the particles that made up Rogers. Rogers' body dissipated like smoke, but in the blink of an eye, the other elementary particles in the universe combined to form another Steve. "I did not reach the bottom of matter, but I reached the higher dimension. What you destroyed, I can create again in the blink of an eye. Creating another 1,000, even 10,000, is a piece of cake." Steve walked out of the void. "I can't destroy you, but you can't hurt me either, and time is only on my side," Stark said calmly. Steve's gaze changed a little. His body flew over quickly, one hand on Stark's chest, and they continued to accelerate away from Earth. They surpassed the speed of light, sublight speed, and approached the speed of light. They reached the maximum speed of matter, turned into photons, and reached the speed of light. The two of them turned into light in rapid motion, and then surpassed light. In the end, they forgot the existence of their bodies and revealed their superdimensional soul thoughts. They surpassed the speed of light and went against the flow of the 4th dimension. The speed of their thoughts became faster and faster. When they came to the Cretaceous period, they brushed past Earth, hit a meteorite, deviated from its orbit, and fell to Earth, exterminating the dinosaurs. When they came to the Jurassic period, they flashed over the dinosaur-infested Earth. During the Cambrian period, they flew over the desolate oceans of Earth and arrived at the most primitive time of Earth, when the sun was born and the moment of the Big Bang. They returned to the end of time. At the moment before the Big Bang, they stopped at the eternal point of time when the zeroth dimension exploded. Stark was stunned. He understood the way Steve wanted to defeat him. Go back to the time of the Big Bang, when the universe was not divided, and the starting point of the multiverse was the zeroth dimension. Steve could not find the underlying matter in the change of matter in the fourth dimension, but he could go back to the zeroth dimension by going back in time. This was the origin of the underlying matter and the underlying state of all the universes. The countless timelines of the multiverse and countless parallel universes originated from here. The matter here was the cornerstone of all the matter in the universe. Here, they were all existences in the zeroth dimension, which meant that Stark's matter did not exist at all. Here, the damage that Stark suffered must be real. This was an indescribable state, a state where even space did not exist. But they saw a person standing in front of the abnormal point that was about to explode, looking down at the abnormal point in front of him. Neither Stark nor Rogers could surpass the abnormal point that contained all the matter, space, and concepts of the universe. As long as they were still in the universe, they could only perceive the abnormal point and could not perceive anything outside the abnormal point. But they just happened to see something outside the abnormal point, or rather, that person was both inside and outside the abnormal point. He gazed at the universe that was about to be created in front of him. He stood at the source of the universe and looked down the river of time. Stark and Steve suddenly understood. They saw a huge problem. Someone stood at the starting point of the universe and looked back. Someone grasped the source of the universe, or he could be called the creator. Stark did not move matter at all. He directly grasped all matter, all universe, all space, and the source of all concepts. And in the next second, it was the Big Bang, where there were the 5 great gods. This person directly stepped on the heads of the 5 great gods and pinched the fertilized egg of the multiverse. The divine radiance that flowed from that person was born with the universe. It shone on all the multiverses a long time. In the radiance, there seemed to be countless angels chanting, "O Holy Father, O Holy Father, O Holy Lord, Creator of the void. The earth is dark, and the Spirit is on the water. In the beginning there was the Way, and the Way and God are one." The hymn resounded in his radiance. Chapter 1152. The little spider woke up from his coma. He found himself sitting on the roof of an old high-rise building. The night wind made him feel cold. Peter stamped his feet and hugged his arms. "It's so cold." The cold wind made Peter's mind clear. He judged that he had been lying there for a long time. Otherwise, with Spider-Man's resistance, he would not have been so cold. He must have been lying on the platform of this building for a long time on this cold night. That was why there was no heat in his body. The strange thing was, after lying there for so long, why did he not wake up with his keen senses? Miss Potts? Batterman? Wong? Peter tried to call out twice, but no one responded. He tried to remember what happened before he fainted. What happened? I remember. Mr. Stark and Captain Steve changed clothes, and Miss Potts's memory seems to be a little different from mine. She called Mr. Stark the second captain and Captain Steve Superman. Then, Mr. Stark invited Captain to outer space, and Miss Potts used a remote sensing satellite to observe their battle. Then, damn it, there was nothing after that. Why am I here? The little spider was puzzled. They left me here. Peter looked around and found that he was standing on the top of a skyscraper. The 4 sides of the building were protruding stone sculptures that looked like monsters. Peter looked down at the city he was in. The bright gas lamps only illuminated a few corners of the city. Most of the place was covered in a curtain of darkness. The neon lights were flashing in the entertainment district. With Peter's hearing, he could hear the faint laughter and noise coming from there. But in most parts of the city, in the dark alleys, old buildings, under the overpasses where the street lights could not reach, and in the sewer network that covered the entire city, some mysterious figures appeared and disappeared. The city used to be prosperous, but the surrounding buildings were a little old. The gray brick structure reminded Peter of Los Angeles in the 1980s. The stench of the sewer and the smell of industrial waste came with the cold wind. Except for a few brightly lit corners, the city was as if dead in the darkness. Only filthy scavengers would wriggle on its corpse. The smell of these animals was very familiar to Peter. He had once wandered the skies of New York and encountered these gangs that ate the city's excrement to survive in the remote corners of the city. The brown blood, the way they walked with guns and baseball bats and machetes, and the dark, clammy smell that Peter knew so well. The only difference from New York was that in New York, those people lived on the edge of the city, wandering in the corners where order could not reach. They lived in the shadows of the city. But here, the entire city seemed to be shrouded in shadows. Instead, the light seemed to be tied up in a corner. Furthermore, this light was not an order under the rule of law, but a hypocritical order under the protection of power and violence. "There isn't even a supermarket that's open at night," the little spider complained. "I still want a cup of hot cocoa. Damn it, even Hell's Kitchen has a 24-hour supermarket. Gotham doesn't have a 24-hour supermarket. There's no need for a 24-hour supermarket here. No one will come out to buy things at night." A shadow wearing a black cape appeared behind the little spider. Peter immediately sensed his presence and turned around, instinctively putting up a defensive posture. But soon, a look of surprise appeared on his face. "Hey, I thought you were all gone. Batman, King Blackbat. Where's this place? Why am I here?" "I've already told you," the knight in the dark said. "This is Gotham, and I should be the one asking you why you suddenly appeared here." Batman's voice was still hoarse. Although he still maintained a trace of wariness, he was no longer that vigilant. Because he recognized Peter's accent, Peter was just a child. Even so, Batman had seen too many children who were not simple. He would not completely trust this person because of this, even if this person seemed to trust him. "I fainted, and when I woke up, I was here." The little spider did not make a fuss just because Batman did not seem to know him. Who knew if there was something wrong with their memories? Moreover, he had a vague conjecture. Who knows if Mr. Stark and Captain Steve went back in time and changed something? Why are those people looking for you? You've been unconscious here for about 3 hours. Just 2.5 hours ago, a group of people entered Gotham. They were looking for you, but I found you first and brought you here. You have 10 minutes to explain. They'll be back soon," Batman said calmly. The little spider was dumbfounded. "How would I know who they are? Maybe it's the Holy Shield. Do you know about the Holy Shield?" Holy Shield? Batman was a little tempted to try his interrogation methods. He had never heard of an organization called the Holy Shield, and the people who came were not from the Holy Shield. He had seen and heard of those people before. They were under the command of an organization called the Light Revelation Order. Why were the people from the Light Revelation Order looking for this boy? Batman felt that he shouldn't get too involved in this matter. Only bystanders could see the truth, so he wasn't going to hide the boy in the red and blue spider suit again. He jumped off the rooftop and disappeared into the night like a phantom. Gotham was a dark city, so the people here liked to wear black uniforms. This boy in a bright uniform with an innocent expression should go to the metropolis to pursue his superhero dream, not Gotham. Gotham could destroy everyone's dreams. It was the sustenance of all fear, depravity, and confusion. The people here rejected outsiders, be it heroes or villains. Before the little spider could ask why Batman had left, he heard the sound of a few cars stopping downstairs. He looked down and saw a group of men in black suits and sunglasses rushing up to the old building he was in. Although he felt that these people were aggressive and did not look like good people with good intentions, Peter, who knew nothing about his current situation, decided to meet these people. What if he could find out from them why he had mysteriously appeared here? The little spider shot out a spider web from his right hand and stuck it to the top of the platform's signal tower. He pulled the spider web and hung upside down on top of the heads of the men in black who had rushed up to the platform. He looked at them vigilantly with a small flashlight in one hand and a gun in the other. Cough, cough. "Hey, are you looking for me?" The little spider coughed twice and quietly put down the spider web. He hung upside down behind a man in black who was obviously of a higher position and suddenly spoke. The men in black were in chaos. Everyone quickly turned around and shone their flashlights behind them. They shouted, "Who is it? Don't move. Raise your hands." They pointed their guns at the little spider, so he could only raise his hands and say, "Calm down. Everyone calm down. I am Spider-Man. I don't kill people. Can we talk peacefully?" Unexpectedly, the man in black had no intention of talking to him. While holding the gun to little spider's head, he took out 2 crayon drawings. He bit on the flashlight and shone on the drawing, carefully comparing it with Spider-Man. The drawing showed a cartoon version of Spider-Man wearing a red and blue tights, standing on a platform and talking to a mysterious man hiding in the shadows, revealing a corner of a bat cape. There was also another drawing. That was the scene of Spider-Man coming out of a blue vortex in the void and falling into a dark alley. In the cartoon, there was also a small black figure, which looked like a small bat, approaching the alley where Spider-Man was from a tall building in the distance. But this figure seemed to be drawn later on. The leader of the men in black, the expressionless and unsmiling man, carefully checked the 2 crayon drawings that seemed to be scribbled by a child, comparing the characteristics of the characters in the drawings with that of the little spider. After carefully comparing for about a minute, he waved his hand and said, "Take him away." Spider-Man saw that these people couldn't make a fart out of him no matter how hard he tried. He had no choice but to pull the spider's silk under his feet. The extremely elastic spider's silk instantly bounced Spider-Man high into the air. The little spider curled his middle fingers and quickly shot spider webs at the black-clothed men around him. These people seemed to be ordered to capture him alive or something. They didn't immediately shoot until the little spider was obviously out of their control. Then they shot at the figure flying in the air. But Spider-Man's reaction speed was much faster than these people's. A red and blue shadow quickly swept across the sky, leaving all the bullets behind him. At the same time, his 2 hands kept alternately shooting white spider webs. The spider webs quickly spread in the air, forming a white sticky web the size of a person, bouncing the man to the ground and making him unable to move. The leader of the men in black suddenly felt that his right hand holding the crayon drawing was stained with something. Before he could react, he was pulled into the air. The little spider spun him around like a spinning top, spinning him at high speed. He had no strength to resist at all. The little spider only needed to stick a thread on his body, and as it spun, the spider's silk on his body would wrap around him, thickening and binding him tightly. Only his right hand was exposed, and it held the crayon drawing tightly. Spider-Man used it to block the guns of the remaining men in black, and quickly snatched the 2 crayon drawings. His right hand shot out a bunch of spider silk at a nearby building. Then, like Tarzan, he pulled the spider silk and swung it into the night sky. Peter flashed twice in the forest of high-rise buildings and disappeared. Only his screams echoed in the alleyways of Gotham. "Goodbye, everyone. I wish you all a sweet dream. Don't dream of me." The men in black stood on the balcony of the tall building and watched the little spider leave easily. They were helpless. However, on the other side of the tall building, Batman, wearing a black cape and clinging to the roof like a bat, stared in the direction that the little spider left. Chapter 1153. The small spider hung upside down at the bottom of the roof of the headquarters of Wayne Corporation. His head was facing the ground as he studied the 2 crayon drawings that he had stolen. It was obvious that the artist was not a professional. She used the form of a comic book to draw some distorted images. The men in black used these drawings to find the location of the small spiders. No wonder they had used several hours to find the old building that the small spider was hiding in. If it was Wayne Corporation, it would have been much easier. Did they come looking for me based on these 2 paintings? Did someone see the scene and draw it? Peter touched his chin. Looks like I came to this world through a wormhole. Is it because of the eye of Agamotto? He took out the bronze eye of Agamotto from his tight suit and realized that the eyeball was already closed. The time stone was sealed by the spell in the eye of Agamotto, and Peter did not know magic, which meant he did not know how to use the power of this divine item. Spider-Man's right hand was still wearing the mechanical glove of the crimson mechanical suit. He raised the glove to the sky and a miniature sand table projection was projected in front of him. On it was the map of Gotham, and on the map, a flashing red dot was moving at high speed. The small spider tapped on the red dot, and the image of the men in black appeared before him. The leader of the men in black sat in the passenger seat as they sped down the road. Just then, a group of gangsters came out from a nearby alley, screaming. They carried an RPG, and the warhead left behind a trail of white smoke as it flew toward the convoy of men in black. The leader of the men in black leaped out of the window. He pressed lightly on the roof of the car, and his whole body flipped over to stick to the roof. The leader of the men in black held 2 guns and fired 3 consecutive shots at the incoming rocket. The rocket exploded in midair. The other men in black who poked their heads out of the car started to fire at the 2 sides of the road. In the blink of an eye, all the gangsters were lying in pools of blood. The convoy continued to move forward, leaving the scene of smoke, blood, and filth behind. Blood splattered on both sides of the street, and some blurry flesh and blood were stuck on the graffiti-covered walls. The nearby residents did not turn on the lights. They quietly went out in the dark and looted all the firearms and valuables left on the ground. Soon, a cleaning company would come to collect the body. They would clean up the blood on the ground before dawn. The cleaning company was, of course, the Wayne family's business. All of this was captured by a small spider-shaped nanomechanical device near the collar on the shoulder of the leader of the men in black. It was transmitted to the cloud database on Spider-Man's side through an encrypted signal. Spider-Man quickly analyzed the gun models, body data, and movement trajectories of the men in black while tracking their whereabouts. They should know something. Peter controlled the brain to invade the network of this world through the robot hand. Maybe they're also the mages of this world. They're responsible for protecting this world or hiding some secrets, just like the Ancient One. Someone among them saw me coming to this world through a wormhole, and then when they came to find me, Bateman was 1 step ahead and hid me. Then he waited for me to wake up and wanted to know why those people were looking for me, but I didn't know anything at that time. I should get in touch with them. Maybe I can find a way to leave this world and return to my original world. The little spider had some doubts. He put on his mask again. These people are really hard to talk to. But why did I come to this world? Is it because of the time gem, or because of the fight between Mr. Stark and Captain Rogers? I brought the gloves of Miss Potts' Crimson Mech. The Holy Shield should be able to contact me remotely. Is it because I traveled to another world, or is there another reason that they can't contact me? The men in black arrived at the port. There was a new large ship docked here. The semi-military ship was simply a frigate with powerful firepower. The leader of the men in black got off the ship and went through several strict inspection checkpoints, including metal detectors and X-ray scans. After confirming that there were no problems, he boarded the ship. The nanomachines used by the little spider were the high-end models of the Holy Shield. Not only were they installed with nanomachines, but they were also anti-electromagnetic interference and used invisible coating materials, so they easily passed the inspection. After arriving at his own territory, the cautious leader of the men in black finally spoke. The target of this mission is very difficult. It is a superhuman with extremely fast reflexes, strength, and agility far beyond that of ordinary people. It can also eject a kind of highly tenacious, highly sticky silk thread. It has rich combat experience, causing the recovery team's mission to completely fail. We should ask for more support from the higher-ups. The Prophet has seen it. An expressionless black-haired woman stood in front of the leader of the men in black. The target is very dangerous, and we can't invest too much manpower in that bat's territory. Damn Gotham City, damn xenophobic Gotham people. If we invest too much manpower in Gotham, they will think that we are invading their territory. Batman has already interfered. He is probably observing us in the dark now. As for those Gotham criminals, the rats in the gutter, they have already warned us when we returned. This mission is very important. The threat that the target poses to us has reached the level of an orange warning. We have to take him in one piece. That is why the committee allowed us to bring the Prophet over. The Prophet will tell us what to do. Where is the Prophet? The leader of the men in black asked with respect. The black-haired woman said softly, "The Prophet is on the ship, so we can't allocate too much manpower. Now, the prophet wants you to find this person. He can help us, as long as we have money. The black-haired woman handed over a piece of crayon drawing. On it was a man in a yellow and black uniform. He was fighting with Spider-Man in a red and blue uniform. Spider-Man magnified the drawing through the mechanical spider. He rubbed his chin and asked, "Who is he, Death Knell?" The leader of the men in black obviously recognized the person on the crayon drawing. He nodded and said, "He is indeed suitable. He will not cause a strong reaction from the people of Gotham. Death Knell is half of Gotham. I believe the people of this city would rather see this familiar face than have strangers like us interfere, right?" The black-haired woman smiled. At that moment, another woman in uniform rushed toward them. She looked at the leader of the men in black with a strange expression and handed a new crayon drawing to the black-haired woman. The black-haired woman looked at the new crayon drawing, and her face immediately changed. It was a drawing of her talking with the leader of the men in black, but the focus was on the shoulder of the man in black. There, a mechanical spider was lying next to the ears of the leader of the men in black, recording everything. The black-haired woman raised her head and ordered, "Level 3 invasion. Ryder, the intruder is on you." Spider-Man hurriedly manipulated the mechanical spider to bounce to the ground and quickly crawl towards the hidden corner. The mechanical spider moved fast, but a layer of power grid enveloped the whole room, and strong electromagnetic radiation hit the mechanical spider. With its strong quality and technological content, the mechanical spider withstood all the attacks and finally fell in the high-temperature flame that sprayed towards it. Sigh, dead again. The small spider, who was treating the process as a game, put down the mechanical gloves that he was controlling. He moved his body and slid into the shadows of Gotham, heading toward the port area. The next moment, the image of Spider-Man moving toward the port turned into a crayon drawing that appeared before the leader of the men in black, Ryder. Ryder raised his head and said, "First, we need to protect the prophet. Then, we need to capture the enemy alive. Send a message to Death Knell and tell him that we will pay 3 times the price for him to appear on the ship in 5 minutes." Bat was still observing everything in the dark. He realized that Gotham was quite lively that night. Many people were moving their claws and legs in the dark. Chapter 1154. In the sky above Gotham, the clouds covered the moon. The port was instantly plunged into darkness. The surface of the sea that was originally reflecting the moonlight became dark and gloomy. On the large ship docked at the port, pairs of men in black raised their guard. In the eyes of the prophet, no one could ambush them. When the prophet saw that an enemy was coming, the enemy would come. Spider-Man leaned against the side of the ship, the side that was facing the sea. He stayed close to the side of the ship, hiding in the shadows. The guards in black patrolled back and forth above him. At that moment, Peter saw a woman with a clown face painted on. Her lips were painted an exaggerated bright red, and her flaxen hair was messy on top of her head. She laughed nervously. She stood on the tall stack of containers at the port and stared at the large ship. The woman laughed like an owl, attracting the attention of the guards on the large ship. This laughter reminds me of an owl. Why is the style of this city so strange? The heroes here are gloomy bats. The villains are crazy clowns. The buildings here are old and gothic, and even the air here has the smell of 19th century London. I've never seen a place with such deep hatred and bitterness in my life. It is as if everyone here has a dark background story. It is the kind where both parents died when they were young, and they seek light in the darkness. They look up at the sky from the cliff. This strange and absurd world is like an absurd play on stage. Everyone wears exaggerated masks to perform. The small spider complained. Now that we are here, I feel like the color of my uniform is wrong. Should I change to a cool uniform color? Red is blood. How about changing it to Scarlet Spider? Or a completely black spider? Even though Black Spider would be better paired with a codename like Black Widow. I do not dare fight with Natasha for a nickname. Even though Sister Na has changed her codename to Venomous Spider is too Luther. Plus, Black Widow is too feminine. Rat Spider? Hermit Spider? Redback Spider? Even though these are poisonous enough, they are not famous enough. Speaking of Black Widow, everyone knows it is venomous spider, but this who knows? How about venom? Venom. Let's call it venom. The little spider spat out a mouthful of insults. In a heavily guarded suite on the ship, a young girl with flaxen hair scribbled on a piece of paper with a crayon. She wrote down the lines of the little spider, so much so that she could not write them on the paper, so she had to write them on the back. She chuckled as she wrote her lines for Spider-Man. Little Spider used a spider silk launcher to stick a web on the side of the ship like a hammock. He lay on the web, swaying along with the waves. He watched the man in black on the ship and the woman in the clown costume standing on top of the container face off. You stopped at the port. You thought you had drawn a line between yourself and Gotham. Maintaining this indifferent state seems to be a kind gesture to avoid angering us. A man's voice came from the woman's mouth. It was the voice of the most terrifying person in Gotham. There were many villains in this city, but only one could represent its soul. It represented the darkness, absurdity, and madness of Gotham. Batman and the Joker were two sides of this city. Their fates were intertwined through this city, but when they were both in Gotham, they would be able to feel each other's breath. Through the city's veins, they mingled in the night and day. No. You are too naive. You. What good is it to stop at the door when the fun comes to you? Ha. Even if it is waiting downstairs, I will go and find it. Furthermore, I only need to open the door. Interesting things should be made more interesting. Joker. The black-haired woman stood on the bridge and glared angrily at the woman in the clown costume. If you want to talk to us, why don't you show yourself? The clown grinned and leaped down from the container. She shattered into pieces on the ground. She was like a fragile piece of porcelain, her flesh and blood shattered on the ground like a fragile vase. She did not look like a living person, but more like a ceramic puppet. The beam of the crane at the port suddenly lit up, and 3 furtive shadows appeared under the light, attracting everyone's attention. They were 3 clowns with heavy makeup and colorful wigs. They pretended to be scared and acted out the image of 3 stupid thieves under the spotlight. If this was a circus, it would have made the children laugh. But no one at the scene could laugh. The 3 clowns said one after another, "In this boring day, a surprise has been delivered to our doorstep. Keep it simple. Keep it simple. Save the escalating emotions." Most of the time, I am a clumsy second-rate actor. Once I leave the stage, I have no idea what I am doing. But once I have an audience and emotions, once I feel like I am back on the stage, then I have something to do. The show is about to start. That is crazy. If I saw him when I was young, that is really a childhood shadow. He ruined my favorite clown show. I mean, when I go back to watch the show with Annie Mae, what reason do I have not to think about it? As a clown, he's already too qualified. That's right. Now is the era of the eyeball economy. A masked bandit robbed a bank. What is there to report? The third-rate tabloid I used to work for, it seems to be called Planet Horn Daily. Even the Planet Horn Daily will not publish such a manuscript. Their editor-in-chief would rather write some news every day about clowns in red and blue uniforms and sensationalism than pay attention to a robbery. But what if a group of clowns robbed a bank? It could be on the New York Daily. Is the New York Daily. I also caught Dr. Lizard and made the headlines of the New York Daily. If he were to say something confusing, it would be best for those who study philosophy, who have read Kant and Nietzsche, to say something crazy, which would win him a large number of fans. The letters sent to him by those literary and artistic young women would be enough to fill up the prison's mailbox. Those who study art and performance would be slightly worse. The madness of art tends to be silliness, and the performance needs to be expressive. The person who is set up can't collapse. Just like what Dr. Chun told me 6 years ago, the performances of superheroes and villains these days are no different from popular celebrities. It's just that superheroes are reality shows every day. They have to set up their personas in order to be surrounded by people. Dr. Chun also studied the public image of superheroes. Unfortunately, Dr. Chun later participated in a confidential project and lost contact with me. The worst are those who study politics and mathematics. They stand in the same place stupidly. Maybe they can mess up the whole show and make the news that can be on the New York Daily to Planet Horn. The little spider was very playful. It chattered on the hammock for a long time. When the three clowns fell from the hanging beam or jumped down with a fanatical attitude, he quickly dashed out. He didn't have the time to stop them just now, but now he was prepared. The kind little spider didn't intend to let people die in front of him. He bent his middle finger and shot out a spider's silk to the hanging beam. Just a shadow flashed, and the three suicidal clowns were hung under the spotlight. A young, even childish voice stayed in the same place. "No need to thank me. I'm a good neighbor of New York, your Spider-Man." The little spider swayed the spider silk back to the big ship. His figure was fast and did not attract anyone's attention, except for the young girl playing with crayons on the ship. She drew Spider-Man, drew his interrupted confession, drew the clown hidden in the dark china. But for some reason, she did not give these crayons to anyone. Otherwise, the men in black would not be so passive. One by one, clowns with painted faces appeared in every corner of the port area. They surrounded the whole port area. The appearance of the clown gang should have been more strange and thrilling after the three clowns committed suicide. But now the clowns who jumped down from a high place and were about to be cut by the sharp steel wire interspersed in the middle was saved by Spider-Man. The three clowns wriggled in the air like silkworms in a cocoon, which greatly weakened the momentum of the clown gang. Chapter 1155. "Let me see. There's a little mouse here." A voice suddenly rang out from behind Peter. He raised his head and saw a strange clown with a face painted with poor quality paint. He was looking down at him from the railing. The clown revealed a kind smile. He was wearing a purple suit that had not been washed for a long time and looked a little greasy. "I knew I would be able to find some surprises here. When I found out that Batty had found you and that these people were looking for you, do you know how surprised I was? You're a living, God-given Gotham. Great aunt in a way. It sounds like you know who these people are." Spidey asked curiously. Of course. They don't like Gotham, and they don't like Spider-Man. They disappeared without a trace, trying to hide themselves, but they didn't know that this would only make them more eye-catching in the eyes of others. The clown licked the corner of his lips to prevent his lipstick from drying up. He chuckled and said, "That is why when I found out they were here, I was so eager. I want to play a game with them." "The clown's game. That sounds very interesting. Am I part of the game? What are the rules of the game?" Spider-Man asked curiously. "Although I'm new here, I've studied you. You're famous in this city. Some people say you're a freak. Some say you're a madman. I look very young, but I know that sometimes you cannot play games." Oh. The clown laughed. "You want to catch me? That is a very big weakness. You can't expose it before me. You see, Spider-Man is richer than me, better at fighting than me, smarter than me, but he always loses to me. Do you know why? When I was young, I was a small fry, a small criminal. I acted like a street thug and followed the bosses. At the time, they sent me to a chemical factory to steal the raw materials for making drugs. At the time, my dream was to be a comedian. I didn't have much talent, and everyone said that I had no sense of humor. To buy my wife a birthday present, I did it. Then Batman came. In the middle of the fight, I fell into a bucket of chemicals, and I came to my senses. There's no need to be so serious about life. I slashed my own mouth twice and became an outstanding comedian. Wayno, I think I accidentally said his name. Can you forget what just happened?" Spider-Man tilted his head and said, 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds, empty the recycle bin. "Now, my head is empty." The clown nodded nervously and said, "Yes. This world needs a sense of humor like yours. We can act it out, right? Batman has surpassed me in everything, whether it's willpower, strength, or wealth. The only thing I can match him in is madness." The clown laughed maniacally. "Only weirdness and madness make him fall just a little short. It's the same now. Listen, I know you want to catch the prophet, but you can't catch the prophet because he can see everything. All of your methods and plans are in his eyes. There's only one way to catch the prophet, and that's to make it come to you. That's why this game is called Peekaboo. You're a player. I'm a player. Batman is also a player. I'll help you catch the prophet. If I catch it, I'll win. You help me catch Batman. If you catch Batman, you win. If both of us are caught by Batman, then he wins. The clown climbed down the side of the ship clumsily and sat next to Spider-Man. The two of them sat on a hammock together. The clown said, "Later, many clowns will appear and attack this ship. Of course, this is all within the Prophet's expectations. What we're talking about here, the plan in my head, everything is in the Prophet's eyes. There are a total of 86 people here, and there's a Prophet hiding in the dark. According to the alert plan of the light revelation, once someone attacks, a team of 50 guards will protect this ship according to the defense plan without any blind spots. An hour after the alarm is sounded, the battleships on the high seas will come to support. Now we still have 43 minutes and 25 seconds. The Prophet's location is the most heavily guarded place. There are 3 checkpoints that will never be moved. The Prophet's crayon drew the 2 people chatting at the side of the ship. She had to write her lines on the back of the paper because the content of their conversation was too lame. When it was time, the Prophet picked up another crayon drawing and passed it to the black-haired woman next to him. The black-haired woman glanced at the crayon drawing. There were many clowns with weird makeup on their faces moving through the containers and approaching the ship. She raised a radio in her hand. "Attention all units, attention all units. The clown gang is approaching." The men in black standing at various firing points on the ship raised their watches. Several drones suddenly jumped into the air and formed a surveillance network without any blind spots. They marked the location of the enemy in the command center, including the position of the ship, but there was no one there. "Snipers, get ready." The command system controlling the drones fired another support drone. The snipers at the highest point on the ship started to aim at the path marked by the drone surveillance network. The cannon fodder of the clown gang, who were entering the predetermined position, did not notice. We're not Batman, who doesn't kill people. The bad guys of Gotham have been spoiled by him. They've already forgotten the fear of death. The commander said coldly, "Contact the Wayne Corporation and prepare the compensation plan." "Has the approval from Interpol come out?" The black-haired woman ordered from where the Prophet was. "I heard it's Gotham. They approved it very soon." The other female guard who was responsible for protecting the Prophet smiled. "With the power of the organization, it's not hard to wipe out the rats of Gotham. We just have to be careful. There are many secrets in this city. If it doesn't affect the safety of the world, we won't bother with it because our power is used to protect the world, not for humans to kill each other. But the rats of Gotham keep provoking us. Is it because they don't want to live?" The commander of the men in black saw that the enemy had entered the predetermined position and ordered, "Open fire." The snipers lifted the skulls of the targets one by one. The drones in the air and the firing points on the ship interwove into a dense firing network. The enemies with clown masks could not escape. Then, the black uniform assault team entered the port under the cover of the firepower. They pulled out the stubborn resistance one by one. The small fights of the criminals of Gotham became a joke when faced with the fierce attacks of the elite military organization. The Light Revelation was a very formal and powerful organization. The clown could toy with Batman and fool the military. His madness could always think of all kinds of unexpected things. He could make the remnants of the clown gang play a big role in the most crucial moment. But against the Prophet, who had a complete map cheat, no matter how cunning Kato was, it was useless. The members of the clown gang were a joke. Luckily, the clown did not care about the lives of these people. He stood in the shadows and admired the death of his subordinates. A mysterious smile appeared on his face. The only one who could kidnap the Prophet was the Prophet herself. Therefore, the clown could not kidnap the Prophet, and Batman could not do anything to the Prophet. Only the young, handsome, and kind little spider could make the Prophet lower his guard and leave with him. Even if you can predict the future, you can't win against the human heart. It's like how everyone is worried about getting fat. They know that eating supper will make them fat, but they still eat it. The one who could defeat the Prophet can only be herself. Chapter 1156. Why we have to go through the door. The little spider was lying at the bottom of the ship. He was wearing the crimson armor of the mechanical suit in his hand. From the position of his finger, a blue laser emerged. This kind of underwater non-scattering laser was the real black technology. In this world, Batman would not be able to develop it even if he invested all of his Wayne Group. Its original model was the laser welding head used by the maintenance robots on the planet Destroyer to resist the interference of cosmic rays. By emitting a strong light conductor aerogel in a strong interference environment, such as foggy weather and underwater environment, the laser was guaranteed not to be affected by the scattering of water molecules. The little spider used it to make a big hole in the shell of the ship. In the double-layered alloy shell, a hole that could allow people to enter and exit was made. After entering, he even welded it. In this way, it was naturally easy to enter. The little spider's battle suit was originally a high-tech product produced by the Holy Shield. But because the little spider's combat style was inclined towards the agile ranger type, it did not carry a large number of strong firepower equipment. Instead, it focused on strengthening its electronic warfare ability. The spider's senses had been amplified through electronic signals, which was equivalent to the effect of an omnidirectional self-radar. Turning on the information warfare support system, the little spider could feel that its senses were magnified to the most acute level by the battle suit. Not only could it keenly sense the subtle vibrations in the air, but its nervous system was also connected to the battle suit, perceiving light, electric signals, and all electromagnetic waves in the vacuum, including brain waves, signals emitted by electric currents through wires, optical fibers, digital signals transmitted through wires, radio waves, heat rays, and air vibrations, all of which were connected by the spider's senses. It opened a big net that encompassed all signals. At this time, the little spider could perceive the location of everyone in the ship, their thermal signals, their brain waves, vague emotions, and even their health. He could also perceive the signals transmitted by hidden cameras, the flowing electrons in modern appliances, and the perception and vision surpassed all the detection tools in this world. If described in a vague language, it would probably be the realm of listening to the sound of all things and knowing all reality and illusion. The little spider could use the high-tech battle suit made by the Holy Shield to amplify its spider senses to the realm of future prediction. Of course, it was not like Stark's state of observing all particle movements after his transformation, predicting all changes, movements, and developments in the universe through determinism, observing all parallel universes. It was also not like the state of Fushi that directly penetrated into the bottom of the universe's information and was omniscient and omnipotent from the perspective of the grand unification of information. Instead, it relied on the spider's senses to predict the opponent's attack, their route of action, as well as their body movements and the changes in the external environment. To put it bluntly, it was the pinnacle of Chinese martial arts, the path of sincerity, the realm of foresight, coupled with the hand armor of the Crimson Mecha developed by the Soviet Union and the electronic warfare and information warfare capabilities of the spider suit. It was a piece of cake to not alert these men in black. For some reason, the Prophet did not warn anyone. So after the little spider entered the cabin, there was a very absurd scene. He swaggered behind a patrolling guard and moved freely in the heavily guarded cabin. The guard came to the first protective door, and two men in black stood at the door, glaring at him. The little spider stuck to the back of the patrolling guard. His body seemed to have no bones, shrinking into a small ball. Just at the moment when the guard opened the door for the patrolling guard, the little spider jumped on top of their heads and lay there, making faces at them. There was an obvious blind spot above the forehead, especially when the focus and attention of the eyes and attention were attracted by the person in front of them. They would not pay attention to their own heads. The dutiful guard carefully checked the patrolling guard, including X-ray, blood test, rapid DNA comparison, body bone comparison, and mental state examination under a lie detector. After these checks, to ensure that the demonic woman's mother would not be able to sneak in, they let him go. And the real intruder, Spider-Man, was hanging over their heads, invading the monitoring route in front of them. The electronic warfare support system on the suit found all the monitoring equipment and sensors on the way, and then tampered with the data. In this way, Spider-Man swaggered through the heavily monitored cabin, using the means of modifying the monitoring and electronic equipment, as well as the blind spots of the guards. Entering here was like going home. I love it here. Spider-Man took a sandwich from the small kitchen and took a bite. Every time I come here, it's like going home. The people here are all talented, and they speak well. I really love it here. It tastes good. Spider-Man passed by the chef who was preparing the meal for the prophet, gave him a thumbs up, and took a small piece of steak from the back. Unbeknownst to him, all of this was happily drawn by the prophet, who was under heavy guard. She took off Spider-Man's mask and drew the young and handsome face of the 21 or 22-year-old spider. She drew him complaining about the chef in the kitchen, making faces at the guards, sticking to the back of the guards, walking into the command room, using the tall body of the guards to cover himself, creating a blind spot, and curiously browsing back and forth among the group of men in black who were fighting nervously like a tourist. Spider-Man did not avoid the clown in all of this. The clown applauded him in the dark and said with a smile, "Well done. I didn't waste the opportunity one created for you to kidnap the prophet." A person who can predict the future is as annoying as a spoiler in a comic book. Their existence has ruined my only joy. This unpredictable world, this strange fate. When I think of the unexpected surprise I created, the surprise that caught Spider-Man and the people of Gotham off guard, the surprise that makes me tremble with excitement. Someone actually knew about this beforehand. What a thing to spoil one's appetite. But it is difficult to kill a prophet. Is it that difficult? I don't think it is difficult. Even if she can see the future, she is just a normal person. She has all the weaknesses of human nature, and the temptation of human nature is, even if you know the danger, the sweet and poisonous fruit will still tempt you to eat it. Love. The clown suddenly changed to an aria. It is such a sweet and poisonous fruit. The prophet's face turned cold. She drew the clown who recited the long lines in the dark, and then drew the clown who was beaten up by Batman. The woman smiled and then called Batman. She lowered her voice and imitated Batman's tone. "Batterman, I know what you are looking for, but I do not want the clown to cause trouble. Go beat him up. I have sent you the address and 3 sachets. When you lose track of the clown, you can open one of them. By the way, when you find him the second time, don't forget to say, 'The prophet told me to wait for you here for a long time.' I will say that every time I find him." Before Batman could say anything, the prophet quickly hung up. She shook her head and said with a smile, "It is just a meaningless conversation. What is the point of saying it?" Batman hung up with a face full of confusion. "Isn't this the special number I used to contact Alfred?" The prophet. "So she is the prophet. Wait, I haven't said anything. Why did she hang up?" The clown. Batman decided to teach the clown a lesson first. Very soon, the message came in. They sent a map of Gotham City. A hidden corner of the port was marked with a red dot. The red dot kept flashing around the other parts of the port. Finally, the red dot overlapped with the other parts of the port. Then a note appeared next to the red dot. "In 5 minutes and 41 seconds, the clown will appear here." The countdown started, and along with the map came 3 messages. They said Sachet 1, Sachet 2, Sachet 3, beat the clown up. After the clown finished his confession, he thought to himself, "Now the prophet will come looking for me." Will she go looking for Batman? Yes, I have made her feel danger, so she thinks that I should be eliminated first. That way, she won't run into trouble when she tastes that sweet but poisonous fruit. Hee hee. It's time to play games with Batty again. The clown emptied his mind and let his mind, which was different from a normal person's, take over. He wandered aimlessly around the port. His mind would go from one place to another, and one place to another. Then, he kept changing his destination. After creating countless parallel worlds, the clown ran past a hidden corner. He still saw Batman, who had been waiting for him for a long time. The clown was not disappointed because he had gotten the information he wanted. Chapter 1157. Hello. I'm looking for a person who likes to draw with crayons. The little spider took out the crayon drawing and stuck it on the face of a guard who was tied up by his spider silk. Please Baidu search. She's probably young, a boy, or a girl, or a young girl. Okay, I don't know either. When I was in the Holy Shield Psychology and Behavioral Analysis class, I was doing manual work. Modifying small cold nuclear devices. This is a unique course. Other universities won't teach you to install nuclear devices by hand. I'm just relying on experience and judgment. Could it be an old man with a child's heart? or a middle-aged man? Like Einstein, do you know the person who drew this picture? Oh, I forgot to take this off for you. Spider-Man lowered his head and removed the spider silk from the guard's mouth. The guard immediately screamed loudly. Spider-Man regretfully said, "Do you see this thing in my hand? It's a sound-absorbing device. No one will hear you even if you shout your throat out. Why do I sound like those bad men in gloomy alleys? Disgusting. You want to find the prophet?" The man sneered. "Yes, he seems to have that name." Spider-Man sighed helplessly. "I didn't mean to hurt him. It's like I'm a murderer. You came to me first. I just want to ask him, why are you looking for trouble with me? If possible, we can have a frank exchange of views. If we can reach a consensus. Then today, nothing will happen here, because you are a suspect." The guard did not have the slightest intention of reflecting on Spider-Man's question. Instead, he righteously said, "You invaded our world. You are a criminal in preparation. You are destined to destroy this world. This is your sin." "Oh my God," Spider-Man complained. "I just came to this world, and I swear to God, I've never hurt anyone since I started my career. I haven't even hurt a pet cat, but I've saved a lot of people." But no matter how Spider-Man tried to prove his innocence, the guards looked at him with a righteous look. Maybe you and Batman have the same code, but that doesn't mean you won't destroy this world. The Prophet has seen everything. In order to protect the world and peace, you may be a good person, but we will still kill you, because good people might not always bring bad results. We do not distinguish between good and evil, because guarding is the highest kind. "Oh my God," Spider-Man held his head and said, "You want to kill me for such an absurd reason? Because your prophet saw that the future world will be destroyed because of me. What if he spouts nonsense?" The guard showed a mysterious smile, and Spider-Man didn't expect this kind of person who was completely brainwashed by their organization to give any useful information. He pressed the crimson mech's gauntlet against the man's chest. At the same time, he used his spider sense to observe the man's brain waves and emotions. He asked as if he was reading a script, "The prophet is a man?" The spider sensed that the guard's brain showed a calm blue color. "It's actually not. She's a woman?" Spider-Man sensed a hint of nervousness in the brain and even an angry red. The guard had noticed that Spider-Man was peeping into his brain. 20 years old? 30? She's not even 20? She's still a child? Oh no, that's a girl. Oh my God. Your organization places the killing list and court decision-making on the ability of girl. Listen to me, women. Even a girl is more unpredictable than the weather in London. You must have killed the wrong person. You actually believe it. Why do you believe in the prophet so much? The guard's brain showed a fanatical white, which was an extremely firm belief. Spider-Man had to give up asking. Spider sense that could detect lies. The technology of the Holy Shield is really scary. Although the armor that Mr. Stark made for me also has many useful abilities, such as electric spider silk, I can't use electric torture on a captive. The Geneva Treaty doesn't allow it, right? But knowing that the prophet is a girl is enough for me to find her. There shouldn't be too many girls on this ship. This is not a high-seas gambling ship or a queuing cruise ship. Spider-Man looked at the guard, trying to see something from his face, but the captive's brain turned into a calm and confident blue-white. He showed a sarcastic smile and said, "If the prophet wants to see you, no matter where you are, he can bring you back. If the prophet doesn't want to see you, even if you are close to him and dig 3 feet into the ground, you won't be able to find him." The little spider smiled confidently, "But I can find her." Spider-Man's senses covered the entire ship, and no one could escape his senses. The little spider went deep into the core and opened a tightly guarded room. "Hey, do you want hot water?" The guard heard the sound and looked back. In the blink of an eye, he was stuck to the wall, floor, and ceiling by 4 balls of spider silk. The little spider slipped in from behind the door and gave a sealed ball of spider silk. He smiled slightly and said, "If you want hot water, pour it yourself." He looked back and saw a girl who was 2 or 3 years younger than him in the middle of the suite. She was looking at him with her head propped up on the desk, and a black-haired mature woman was glaring at him. She said angrily, "The Revelation of Light is a bunch of trash. They actually let the enemy directly enter the core guarded area." You are too harsh on them. The little spider could not bear it and said, You don't even know what they are facing? It's just like when you play RTS games and someone ignores the terrain and buildings in the fog of war and opens a terrain cheat. Unfortunately, technology is a cheat in the real world. That's why we call the developers of the real world cheat scientists. Do you think you have succeeded by coming here? The black-haired woman sneered and said confidently, The prophet saw everything. She did not stop you because she wanted to see the scene of me knocking you down again. This is in front of the prophet, so you are lucky that you will not die immediately, because I will not let the prophet see your dirty blood. Before she finished, the little spider had already put on the armored gloves. Infrasound. The black-haired woman fell to the ground, unconscious. This is an infrasound weapon? The prophet looked up and said, I saw you use more than 600 different ways to knock her down. But she said the same thing. Looks like she has been holding it in. Why didn't you warn her? The little spider was surprised. This mission was too easy, too much. Because I've observed you 19,561 times, and there wasn't a single world in which you chose to harm me. You're truly a harmless little animal. The first no said, and Penny betrayed me 182 times, stabbing me in the back. What? The little spider said sympathetically, Is that all you saw? You are safer than her. The no first said, Of course, this does not mean that she is dangerous. You should know that as long as there is a possibility that she will not hurt me, I can make it happen, unless that crazy joker. If I deliberately appear in front of him, there is no possibility that he will not hurt me. What a lunatic. Batman. He will not kill me, but he will hit women. So, I don't think you are any threat to me. As for you wanting to take me away, I have wanted to go out for a long time. Do you think anyone would want to be followed by a large group of people all day long? I'm not allowed to go here, I'm not allowed to go there. There is nothing in this world that can threaten me, but Penny and the others are still so nervous all day long. The little spider looked at the rebellious prophet and said hesitantly, I just want to ask, why would I want to kill you? The prophet raised her head and asked. Then, she did not answer. Instead, she hugged the little spider's waist and placed her head on his chest, saying, Take me away and I will tell you. The little spider had no choice but to kidnap the prophet from the mysterious organization that protects the world. He had the armored gloves carry him up into the sky while the prophet grabbed his waist. The armored gloves shot out a high-energy laser beam that cut through the deck of the ship and shot up into the sky.